Well, I guess this show is live, and once again, I forgot to plug in my earphones first. And I'm thinking, what do I need to for? Because after all, um, I don't see any gods waiting to talk to me yet, so you know, not going to hear them anyway, right? But they're invited. The link is waiting for them in the live chat. And of course, any non-gods are welcome to join if they'd like as well. I mean, the show is called called Gods Invited, not non-gods invited. Well, all gods invited, not non-gods invited. But it's all right, you know. I try to be welcoming here, regardless. A little atheist humor there, because yeah, I don't actually expect there are any gods. But in all seriousness, though, we should give them a fair chance, right? I mean, there might be of some kind, and maybe religions have just narrowed the term down so much that nothing qualifies anymore unless it's imaginary. And of course, if they insist that their idea of a god is not imaginary, well then an imaginary one doesn't qualify either. So they've narrowed gods down to zero possible in that sense. But that's not all religions, I mean, as Answers in Atheism mentioned in the chat, about 6 hours ago, some Buddhists would say, they're gods. Different definition of, what a god is. Of course, an atheistic Buddhist who doesn't believe in any kind of God wouldn't say that. But one who doesn't believe in extremely powerful personal deities, that kind of God, a theos, specifically, they might still say, well, we all do our own creating. Oh, yeah, me God. Hi, Answers in Atheism. It's in the chat. By the way, my chat stuff hasn't been showing up in the replay, and I don't know why. Just posting a little thing slightly late in Discord Atheism channel on the ACA Discord. Atheist Community of Austin Discord. I'm not in Austin, by the way. I'm in Los Angeles, but long story there. ACD, Atheist Community of Discord, just posted going live now. Takes a day or two. Oh, well, thank you for that. I wondered about that, if there might be some processing thing involved that maybe, it won't start doing it right away, or won't show up right away, or maybe you've got to do it, a certain number of times before they let you, because yeah, there's stuff like that in YouTube. At any rate, so yeah, if you want to go ahead and join the stream, there's the link in the chat again. If anybody can't see the chat, not that I think there's necessarily a lot of people watching this, says I've got 4 people in here, but the link to join this particular episode's live stream and be a part of it is streamyard.com/h69 RNNW792. That's all lowercase. StreamYard.com/H69 RNNW792. Posted it in the chat. So Should I look upward and repeat the address? Because gods are supposedly upward, no matter which side of the planet you happen to be on at the time. It makes you wonder when you think about that. Is that a reference to, like, maybe they're just above your eyes? um, are we just worshiping our own brains and we don't even realize it? Well, not we, but I mean people who worship gods. Are they just worshiping their brains and not even realizing it? I mean, I try to treat my brain good. I try to be nice to my brain. I, you know, try to keep my body reasonably healthy so that it has a reasonably healthy body to live in, and things like that. I don't worship it. um, I mean, considering that it's the part of me that I use to identify myself, it's weird even talking about it that way. But yeah, still try to treat it decent. So, what should I talk about? Oh, hold on. Gotta get my reading glasses back on because I can't see good close up without them. Oh, let's see. There's the link. Somebody in Discord said I should probably link the video. So there you go. Who was that in there? The Ruvalin? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right or not. At any rate, so here's the thing. I was expecting, I hadn't really planned per se a schedule on this, but I was kind of thinking I would do like one episode about every 8 days, a little over a week apart. And did the first episode yesterday morning, and no gods showed up. So, I mean, a bit of a bomb episode, you might say, because I mean, after all gods invited. It's the name of the show. Gods don't show up. It's kind of ruining my show here. Gods, come on, you're supposed to be a part of this. So 12 hours after that one started, I started episode 2 in the evening, and again, no gods showed up. At least some people, humans showed up. So thanks people, thanks non-gods, you're helping out here, because that's something. Otherwise I'm all by myself here. And of course, if you can't see the chat replay, if you're watching a recording of this, kind of looks like I'm all by myself anyway. But is this kind of what theists are going through? And they try to tell people their God is real, and it really looks like they're just talking to themselves. So yeah, I'm not talking to myself. I am talking to a live stream. And if no one at all watched the live stream, well, it's like the question of, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Or you could say, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one around but the tree, is the tree the only one that hears it? Trees don't have ears. So at any rate, yeah. What to talk about? Yesterday, in the evening show, we got talking about a bunch of different things. Have someone joined me here, Top Dog Chaddick. Hello.
Hey,
Good to not be completely alone here, or should I say, not seem completely alone here. I mean, after all, maybe there are gods that have already joined me, and they're just, like screaming at me from behind, going, "Hey, can't you see and hear us here? We're like, trying to photobomb you, and cameras just don't seem to be picking us up."
so what are you considering as a god? What do you consider as a god?
Well, I don't consider there to be anything that I would call a god, but I was raised in a Christian household. They the standard for what a god was set in that environment. Uh, I'd say mainly by the Bible, by parts of the Bible at least, and something at least resembling all knowing and all powerful, able to show itself would probably be a key factor there. I mean, you look at the Old Testament where Yahweh walked in the garden with Adam and Eve, and he talked to all kinds of crazy people, like the guy who built a boat and saved the only family um, allowed to survive, namely his own, and small group of animals from complete extinction. And well, Yahweh wiped out every other living thing on the planet, supposedly. It looks like fiction to me. So I'm thinking real gods, probably no such thing, but a whole lot of people believe there are real gods. And when I ask them to invite their gods to come join a conversation and speak for themselves, instead of having people who have never personally met them speak on their behalf, or people who hear a voice in their head and call it God, speak on their God's behalf. I mean, if that's all it is, if their God is just a voice in their head, then I'm perfectly fine with if they want to just say that and say, well, my God only exists as a voice in my head. The only way it can talk is like through my mouth because it's using my brain. I'd be like, okay, in that case, go right ahead, speak on behalf of your God. But I would feel a little awkward calling it a God, because to me that's just a part of their brain.
Have you ever seen like Marvel movies where Thor is supposed to be a god, but he seems like he's just like a human that just has like, or not human exactly, I guess, because he's like super tough or something. So it's
Yeah,
like
I've
Superman almost too, where he's
I've
supposed to
seen
be
bits
another
and pieces
alien
of such
being.
things. Yeah, this
It's
is
just different.
this is the whole thing. This is one of the reasons why I want to do this, because either there aren't any gods at all around, or maybe we're just using the word wrong. And I'm not the authority to make that decision of what's the case. I mean, if again, if you define a god as some powerful personal deity, would Thor qualify as that? Yeah, probably, if it was Thor was real, but barely. And and chances are Thor probably isn't real. Now, was he based on some real human being or real something that lived years ago? I don't know. It's entirely possible. I mean, I know there are legends about me out there, and uh, I'm real, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of the details in the legends have been fabricated or exaggerated, because these things happen. And a lot of the things I've been through in my life are pretty much unbelievable without getting exaggerated. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if there are people out there who believe that I don't exist because they've heard unbelievable stories about me, and don't think there's any such thing as somebody who could have been through or done the things that that I've done in those stories. And if I heard those versions of the stories, I'd probably think that person doesn't exist as well. If the Jesus of the Bible were to somehow end up here in our time and read the Bible and understand it, chances are, he wouldn't recognize that character of the Jesus in the Bible either. As a matter of fact, it's probably not one person. It's probably more than one person got melded into a character in several stories. And I doubt any of the real people that ended up being part of that character would recognize that character at all.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a work of fiction to them. But I don't know. I wasn't there.
So, Thor, since we know that the actor, right, Chris something, exists, then people watch the movies and stuff and think he's an actual deity or something to them. There's some people out there.
Yeah, there are people who do that sort of thing. That they watch a movie or a TV show and they confuse the actor with the character. I've had it done. Where people attribute characteristics to me that they've seen in some work of fiction that I've been a character in. I've had people that came to me years after seeing me as an alien from outer space, tell me that that they just recently figured out, or maybe still haven't figured out, that that wasn't real. Apparently I played that role a little too well, and hadn't meant to deceive anyone. That wasn't the intention. It's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Were you in any of the Oh God movies?
And no, that would have been cool.
As God.
Yeah, no, that would have been cool though. Heck, I've certainly had the hair for it enough times.
Would it be a rush to have Otangelo play God in an Oh God movie with the Otangelo voice?
That could be interesting. Yeah,
that would be very interesting.
Yeah, his accent would work beautifully for it, in my opinion.
Speed, it's a machine.
Yeah.
So, have you tried defining like a minimal God? What would a minimal God being be like? What would it do? What would its character be? Would it have a mind?
I have tried, and I don't think I've done very good at it. And I could try to articulate it, but that's part of the reason behind deciding to do this series is because people, it's almost like they're moving the goalpost constantly on what a God is, let alone what their own God is. And
right.
You can't nail it down. And so I figure, well, if anybody comes on here and describes their God, there's at least a point to start with, because then at least we've got a description. If we've got several people who do that, we've got multiple descriptions to work with. If anybody comes on representing themselves as a God or as a prophet of a God or as speaking on a God's behalf or anything like that, it's more information we can go on. And, the thing is, usually this kind of information only gets presented in religious formats where they're tainted by the religion itself that wants you to believe a certain kind of thing. I don't have any set of things that I want people to believe. I would prefer that people believe the truth, but if somebody doesn't want to believe the truth, say for example, somebody is, dying of some incurable deadly illness, and they don't want to believe that because it's uncomfortable. I certainly don't want to make their life uncomfortable by convincing them that they need to believe the truth. I mean, I would want to believe the truth in that situation, but that's me. And I understand that not everybody thinks like me. As a matter of fact, I think my thinking is probably kind of unusual in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I've been accused of that by Danny. Well, no.
Yeah. And his way of thinking is unusual as well. And I don't mean that as a compliment or an insult, just an observation. And he'd probably agree. I don't know, but I'm thinking, if you thought about it, yeah, probably agree.
I think what frustrates me is that, when I ask that, what would a minimal God be? They almost automatically assume underneath that it's just another, like a human being sort of thing, right? And they don't want to sketch that in. They don't want to say, well, does it think? Does it think in time? Does it have one and another thought? And that's kind of the stuff I want to know. What do you think about this being? And if this being sits around and observes you and is surprised by what you did in your free will, then obviously he saw you do something in time. So he doesn't have time, but he's thinking about it and observing you, but you do have time. How does that work? I don't know.
Yeah, well, and also, if you go with the Bible's God, because that's an example I know a lot about. I've, had plenty of experience with people talking about it. I've read the book in, several translations and stuff. That one, he repented things that he did. He changed his mind about stuff. Yeah. He decided after having done some terrible thing that he would promise never to do that particular terrible thing in that particular terrible way again. So that God is capable of making decisions and of learning, even though he's defined elsewhere in the same compilation of what's, treated as one book, as unchanging and therefore incapable of learning. And for that matter, all-knowing and therefore incapable of learning. But yeah, I have asked theists in the past, if their doorbell rang or if there's a knock on their door and, I went to their door and answered the door for them, or somebody else that they knew and trusted went to their door and, answered their door for them and came back and said, God's at the door. He wants to talk to you outside. Right. What would your reaction be? Or, would you believe that God was actually out there waiting to talk to you? And I get reactions like, well, that couldn't happen because God is everywhere. Or God doesn't work that way and things like that. But the Bible's God, according to the Genesis story, which again, most Bible scholars, as I understand it, consider that story to be allegorical, not factual, but it's treated as factual by a lot of believers. And in that story, God came down from the sky and talked with Adam and Eve. And, after they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which they weren't supposed to eat from because, that would teach them right from wrong. And then they'd know not to do what they were told not to do. He came down and asked where they were. Yeah. As if he didn't know, which, so then was he trying to fool them into thinking that, he didn't know where they were, or did he really know where they were? Maybe, putting in the book that's supposed to be his word, maybe he's trying to fool other people into think that, he does know where they are at any given time.
Maybe if we found an atheist that was like very recently a Christian and one who thinks about these things, they could come and tell me, because I really want to know. It always seemed like the conception of God when I went to church when I was a kid was this big daddy in the sky, and we just never just accepted it's a big daddy in the sky, and you can't see him. He's got a pretty big boomy voice, and he can be really, really tough if you mess with him. But that was it, and that's the conception. Going any further than that, but you've got to conceive of this thing, and I mean, if it has a mind, to have a mind, you have to have thoughts, right? I mean, you have to be thinking, and that means that one thing has to change from one place to another.
Yeah,
a thought.
Generally, I mean, at least in our experiences, it's generally something you expect. If you're going to have thoughts, you have to have something to think about, at least some starting point. And I mean, if we're really talking about a being who existed before there was a universe, well, a universe would include itself, because the God would be something. And if there's something, then there's a universe, because the universe is everything, which would include the something. So, if the God existed before even the God existed, what would there be for that God to think about?
Yeah,
Couldn't even think about its own imagination, because even its imagination didn't exist yet.
because you have to have something, some object or something to stitch together, or
Yeah.
two objects. You have to have two objects to rub together to have a thought, right?
All gods are invented by man, though.
It's kind of like that old, I think, therefore I am. Except in that case, it would be like, well, I wasn't, but then I thought, so therefore I was.
Yeah. Well, we know that all gods are invented, Doug, but because we're rational human beings, but by man, right? But I mean, what the hell are they thinking? I mean, they're thinking, oh, okay, so I think the out on that is God created man in his image. So God was a man-like thing. But okay, what is a man-like thing then? Did he have arms? Did he look like a primate? Did he?
Well, the Bible does describe a lot of anatomical features of its God.
Does it?
So there's that. Yeah, I forget exactly which one.
Fingers.
Yeah, there's all kinds of references in the Bible to different body parts of God. It's got, that God has human body parts. I mean, I can't think of the actual verses off the top of my head, but I mean, basically, well, it walks, so it's got legs or feet, something to that effect. It's been seen from its backside, so it's got a backside. It apparently has, a digestive system, and it has a face, and it has, as Top Dog mentioned, it has fingers, and it's got all kinds of body parts that seem to be human body parts. Maybe they're just, references to something people could understand. Then again, maybe, it actually was a human being that just got, stretched all out of proportion when people told stories about it. Or maybe it was just a personification of something that people didn't understand. Like, like when they're in their cave at night and they're, trying to get some sleep, and there's noises outside, and they go outside and they don't see anything, come back in, trying to get to sleep, and they hear more noises, and they go out and they don't see anything. Well, what's making the noise out there? Well, if you make it out to be something benign, something that isn't going to hurt you, then you can get to sleep.
Well, there's some caves that have like certain gases or something that makes you delusional, or it makes you lack of oxygen. So then they have hallucinations and stuff. So then
that's
people writing down whatever they're experiencing.
Yeah, that's another thing. That not just the environment of the caves that our ancestors lived in, but also the foods that they ate. I mean, they had to eat what they could find, and plants, mushrooms, animals, some of which might have been dangerous or had some kind of venom or some sort of a poison. Some of the foods that they ate would have probably killed them. Some would have probably made them sick, and some would have probably made them think a little wrongly, think in ways that their brain hadn't really evolved to handle very well, because it's not, part of their usual chemistry, or environment. And with all that in mind, it really shouldn't be at all surprising if there are some stories from some of our ancestors about things that it seems they must have just hallucinated. Now, does that rule out the possibility that maybe there were aliens from another planet with a technology that we would, rightly call godlike these days, even compared to our own current technology? I mean, no, it doesn't rule it out. Seems a little far-fetched, considering all the time that's gone by, and we haven't had any, verification of such things being out there. But then again, maybe maybe they were around and came and visited our planet, and it might have been a really long trip, and one way that they never went back. They maybe just sent radio signals home or something, and died off here, and now they're not around, and our stories still still proclaim them to be alive because we've given the story characters the added attribute of living forever. I don't know. I mean, these are just hypotheticals. If we can just get a god to come on the show and speak for itself, maybe it can answer some of those questions.
I think you have to have 1,000 views and so many hours of watch time before God will actually come on.
That could be.
Yeah.
4,000 hours in 24 or 12 months.
1,000 subscribers. I'm sorry. You have to have 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been wanting to start some sort of a serious series for some time. I actually, tried to start one a long time back. I was going to name Chronos Series and had plans for it. And then my union told me that if I was going to be on camera, I had to have, I forget their wording for that. I had to have a contract, basically. I had to make a contract with myself and, register it with the union or something. And so I tried to work out all the details of that, and I think I finally got that finished to where I could do that. But by that time, the whole idea had just fizzled out and never ended up happening. That kind of threw a wrench in the works.
So union is another reason why God may not be able to come on your show.
Yeah, that's quite possible. Yeah, maybe the God union won't allow him unless maybe I signed some contract saying that I'm not going to have non-union gods on my show.
Like me, because I am God. I don't know if you notice that in chat.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah. About that, in what way would you call yourself a god? In what way would you consider yourself a god? And and how serious are you about the whole I'm
pretty serious
God thing?
God is all things, right? God is all things, all things natural. All things in the universe is God. So God is like everything. The God or the universe is God Maya, or basically, which is the dream of the universe is God. So but in my form of Buddhism, so the universe would be God being or acting, right? That everything in the universe, there's a carrot. If I got a carrot in my hand, it's God. Okay. And I don't really exist. I'm just a thing, another one of those things in the universe. In fact, and there's no way to define where I am exactly, because I am sort of all over, spread all over, connected to everything. Therefore, I'm God. So
a little humor there. You said if you got a carrot in your hand, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's God, and the stick in the other hand is the devil, right?
Yeah. No, the salt I put on the carrot, my doctor said that's the devil. So, but
okay.
But the idea behind Buddhism is to lose yourself and to understand that all things are one and connected. That and not one in the sense that they're all the same, but that all things are so absolutely dynamically interconnected that you can't pick a carrot and say, that carrot ends right there, where the orange part stops. You can't do that. So you're looking at things through all time and through all space. And then, so the idea behind Buddhism is to lose your attachment to yourself to the point where when you die, you'll just say, oh, okay. I'm going to do that now. Now I'm going to rot, so, and I'm not going to think anymore. And I'm not going to have, I'm not going to get up and run around and build shit anymore and make a sandwich. I'm just going to die. So that's kind of the idea behind what I define as secular Buddhism, which I think is pretty goddamn close to a lot of Buddhism in the East, not so much in the West. When you go to Hollywood, they got all sorts of stupid ideas. They've taken words like reincarnation and they've turned them into this bullshit, which they got from from the text, right? They dogmatize the text, that you come back as an insect. Well, what I just told you, if I am everything and I die, I in that caterpillar.
Yeah, then you already are the insect.
I already are the
insect. Coming back as.
Yeah.
Well, that leads in a bit to my particular concept of an afterlife, because I do think there is a sort of an afterlife. I generally don't call it an afterlife because people will mistake that for, other concepts that, that I'm not talking about. But the way I look at it, what we would consider a spirit, like, say, for example, somebody says, I went to a party and, there were good spirits there, or, don't hang that up. It's not with, it doesn't mesh with the spirit of the holiday, or whatever the case might be. We do have concepts of what a spirit is. And,
Personality for me.
What's that?
Because like one version is a personality.
Yeah, personality. That's again, fits into like a subset of what a spirit is.
Now, the good spirit Northern Minnesota party is a whole lot different than what you're talking about. Good spirits are different.
Yeah. Well, and of course, when we were talking about alcoholic beverages, why did they call them spirits? Well, because the alcohol, as it evaporates, you can see something moving coming out of it. It's sort of an essence of something. Why do people call certain oils an essence or an essential oil, meaning not that it's needed essential, but essential as in it is an essence? Same basic concept, because you can smell them from a distance. You don't have to be in physical contact with them in a way that you can recognize as like tangible. You don't have to reach your hand out and touch it. You can sense it from a distance. But the thing is, you are in physical contact with things that you smell. They're actually getting into your nose, just in very, very small quantities, and we're very sensitive to those things. So I figure, if you want to get, realistic about, using the term spirit in a way that doesn't include nonsense and doesn't include, things which probably can't or don't exist, then it would make sense to say, okay, yeah, each human being does have a spirit. Maybe you could even say a soul, whatever it is about that person that makes them that person, other than like their physical form. And well, like you were talking about, when you die, if you're thinking when you die, like, okay, well, this is it, now I'll rot. Well, if your brain is dead, of course your brain probably isn't going to be thinking that at all. Right. Are your molecules going to be thinking that? Well, in a sense, I mean, they're going to be doing it. So if the doing could be considered a thought.
Like right now, what my molecules in my brain are doing is being me, right? And when I die, my molecules in my brain aren't going to be, they're going to be doing something pretty drastically different, because in the 3 or 4 minutes as you die and as you lose oxygen in your brain, and at least 2 hours later, the fats are going to start to break down, or there aren't going to be any neurons firing anywhere. And so they're going to be doing something totally different. So you could like, did you see American Beauty with that bag that was floating in the wind, in the breeze back and forth?
I'm not familiar with.
Okay, it's a movie with Kevin Spacey, if you can still say that on YouTube. But it's a movie with him, and he is having this moment with I don't know if it was him or one of the characters, but there was a bag and it was blowing up from a vent. I think it was a vent coming up or something, or the wind, and it was kind of like going back and forth, and it was behaving very intelligently.
Oh, okay.
And Ellen Watts, when he
an apparent intelligence.
Right. Ellen Watts, when he first took LSD, he wrote a book, and he talks about watching a dandelion seed in the wind. And he was talking about the intelligence of the dandelion seed finding a place to land where it could take root, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're alive, you're doing all this buzzy stuff. We're like buzzing, interconnected with everything. And then you die, and all of a sudden, pretty boring now. Everything shuts down, and that is the trend that we're looking at. So you can say that is spirit, that little buzzy sort of thing that seems to be moving around and interacting intelligently.
That's a really good example, and that's the the kind of thing. Well, like for example, I started this series. I tried to get theists to start something like this, and they won't invite their God. to even, join a conversation and speak for itself. They're like, well, they'll be like, well, God's already here. He's already talking. It's like, well, I don't see him. I don't hear him. I can't identify him. Can you help me out there by, like asking him to make himself a little more obvious? And they're like, well, God doesn't work that way.
I think their job is to say dumb, mystical sounding things that they can't prove. And of course, you could accuse the Zen master of doing the same shit, right?
Yeah. Well, I think
it's unfalsifiable.
I think it depends, of course, on the individual, but I think in a lot of cases, what's going on is that their religion has reinforced a certain part of their brain calling itself God, and that part of their brain doesn't want them figuring out that it's just a part of their brain. It's it's been living in this deception, and it doesn't want to like piss them off by letting them know they've been deceived. So it finds ways of convincing them to not do certain things that would reveal the truth about it. But that is a part of who that person is, and when they die, when that brain dies, that's going to go away with the rest of them. But like this thing that I've started, it's a project. I mean, I start different projects. I've got, when I die, when this body and this brain that's part of this body die, and of course me being part of Earth, part of this galaxy, even if I left Earth, I'd still be part of the galaxy. All of this matter that makes up me, when that stops being a living biological entity that we can call a human, and becomes maybe a corpse or something like that, a lot of the stuff that people would recognize as me will go on without me, and people will still be able to recognize me in some of the things that I've started that will continue on in the absence of this particular brain and body having any direct influence on it at that time. Indirect influence or influence from the past, yeah. And that is kind of my idea of an afterlife. That's an afterlife we can prove actually happens. I mean, you could always say, there's an afterlife in the sense of like, I die, life goes on for other people, therefore there's life after death. But in the sense of the individual living on, I think there are ways that a person can live on to some extent in some ways. But how much that's going to happen depends a lot on, does the person understand what that is, and are they taking some control of it and saying, let's make this happen, let's play an active part in trying to make sure that what I leave behind of myself is something I would want to leave behind of myself, and not just something that I had no say in the matter of, because I was too busy thinking about this non-existent realm that I thought I was going to end up in when my brain died. So, yeah.
Well, people are scared, and they don't want to know that they don't last forever.
Hi, Tanya.
Hey.
Hey, if you look at the side chat, I said, to be forgotten is worse than death.
What was it?
I said, to be forgotten is worse than death.
Oh.
Yeah, but...
well, it's a different kind of death, I mean, and that's the whole thing, like the dandelion seed, floating in the wind. Somebody can perceive that as a life, the life of the flight of the dandelion seed. Now, if your brain twists that into the life of the dandelion seed, and thinks that once the dandelion seed stops dancing around in the air and sits down on the ground somewhere, that it's not moving, so now it's dead. Then the brain has probably made an error, because it's very possible that dandelion seed will manage to get enough moisture to sprout a root and grow a dandelion. So it's really not dead yet, but its little dance in the air has died. That particular life that it had taken on in some sense is over. It stopped doing that, and maybe it'll have another one. Maybe a breeze will come along and pick it back up, and in that sense it can live again. And in that same way, yeah, if I get forgotten, if nobody remembers who I am after I'm dead, I don't much care. What I care about is the same, what I care about going on without me is the same stuff I care about going on with me. That, I want to make the world a better place. And, what's left of me after this body dies, I would like to continue going on helping to make the world a better place for other people, for other living things.
Okay, can I ask you something really quick? You said you really don't care, whether people forget you. Is that right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so let me so say you do all these amazing things, yet everyone forgets that you did them, and they forget about you. You said you wanted to make a difference in the world, didn't you?
Just like Thomas
Yeah.
Edison, if we forget him, and then but all his inventions and stuff that still live on.
Well, there's a good example there.
But nobody forgets Edison. Everyone remembers who he is. So the example
Do
doesn't
they
really
really?
work.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay. You know Thomas Edison invented the light bulb?
No, I just know. No, I know that he technically stole it. That's
There
not.
you go.
That wasn't the
See,
point. That wasn't the point I was making, though.
no, I know, and I get it, but there's a point I'm trying to make here. That's why I brought that up. There are a lot of people who do know that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, and he didn't. He didn't invent the light bulb at all. He didn't really steal it either, per se. What really happened? My best understanding of it is the light bulb had already been invented. Thomas Edison owned an invention company which had employees, and his employees were assigned to find a better filament to make a light bulb be able to glow longer before the filament burned up and made it stop. And so they tried all kinds of materials until they come across a material that lasted a long enough time that Edison's invention company could put a patent on it and take credit for it and make a saleable product and make money off of it. And so Thomas Edison being remembered for having invented the light bulb isn't really remembering Thomas Edison anyway. It's remembering the name and an event that never really happened. And in the same sense, as I mentioned earlier, there are already legends about me. It's unlikely that I will be forgotten for a very, very long time, in the sense of, people will still know of me in some way. Now, some of these legends, people that know me might not even recognize the name. I've got multiple nicknames. My Indian name is Fuzzy, by the way. So
Hey,
if you ever hear legends of Fuzzy, that might just be me.
Dak,
But
I just got a call from somebody that said they're backstage.
Yeah, John.
Done. For about 10 minutes.
oh, I see. Okay. I didn't know I had to scroll this thing down to see there's one more person. Thank you for that. All right, adding him in, and yeah. So
I gotta go get ready for the weather report in about 10 minutes, but anyway.
all right.
I
should probably end this soon anyway, and just do another episode sometime soon.
Is it possible that we could start a little project and try to steel man the Christian God and try to make them?
Could try.
Is that possible?
Well, I think I'm going to account for the evil and all that bullshit, but we have to figure out this. We have to figure out some basics about: does he think?
Well,
is he
I think
separate?
if I can throw a wrench in that, and no, not meaning to derail it or anything, but just I think this is important to bring up. Steel manning which Christian God? Because if somebody believes believe in the Christian God, but their God doesn't match the Bible's Christian God, which is that's what seems to be commonly out there.
Well, can I add to that? Okay,
Sure.
So because before I had to reveal my identity, I was going to come in here and make the argument from the position of Satan that he's the real God of the Bible. I was just going to kind of joke on you, but then I had to say who I was in the private chat. I figured I'd sitting back there thinking maybe you saw my avatar and the name that I chose and said, "Oh, that's some kind of troll."
Yeah, no, I didn't even see it. I mean that's something I'm gonna have to watch for more in the future because I mean, after all, I did name this series "All Gods Invited." I wouldn't want to see. I wouldn't want to not see some actual god that showed up and is waiting to get in.
What the heck was that? And so I mean, I've said for the longest time, how do you know that Satan isn't the good guy in the Bible?
Yeah.
Well, the Bible itself actually alludes to it, there being some kind of a deception, and alludes to itself, not the compilation that it is, but at least parts of it actually being that deception or being a part of that deception. Yeah, there are a lot of people who worship the Satan character from the Bible and figure that was the real God, and the Yahweh character was the evil one, and that this is a test to see, can you really tell right from wrong? Can you tell good from evil? Because if the character that's made out to be a serial mass murderer is labeled as the good guy, and the one who tells you that character, that evil one labeled as the good guy, is a liar and is deceiving people, and that's true, then they label that one as the bad guy.
And just to comment on what you were talking about when I got backstage, it's really weird because, all Christians talk about, well, you can't have, if you don't believe, how do you have any meaning or purpose in life? I mean, and I've said for the longest time that people that don't believe in God really are getting the most meaning out of life because they appreciate the fact that this is the only life they're getting.
I agree.
Working towards some afterlife that doesn't exist.
Right. And God is trying to fool us, and Satan is trying to tell us, no, eat that cheesecake, enjoy it, enjoy life, enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think both characters are fiction, but is there some reality in the stories? Is there some reality to be found in there? Probably, because I mean, it seems to me there's reality in every work of fiction. You just have to be able to separate it from the fiction, and that's why it's called a work of fiction, is because it's kind of a warning that it's not all reality. It's not like a warning that none of it's reality, because we humans wouldn't even know how to write such a thing. I mean, it's like mashing keys on a keyboard. What's that?
So what does science fiction mean? But how is it science?
Yeah, well, science fiction is fiction that has to come close enough to conforming with reality as science has discovered it. That it makes it at least somewhat difficult to recognize that some of it isn't real.
Well, wait a minute.
It becomes actual facts in a sense, not the exact, but some of the science we can make up into reality.
How was Jules Verne? How was he anywhere near reality? I mean, nobody, but he envisioned like flying to the moon in a rocket ship. Like, who envisioned shit like that back in that day? I don't think anybody was.
Well,
but the difference is, if you scrutinize it, you'll find that at least some of those things that seemed far-fetched turn out to actually be possible.
Well, right.
Maybe not likely, but at least possible.
My theory is, though, that science fiction writers, maybe not so much today, but throughout the time that science fiction has been written, they're the seers. They're seeing the future because they put a crazy story out like that, and it ends up inspiring other people to make it happen.
Yeah, they saw the future by inventing the future, in a manner of speaking. And that happens a lot. A lot of science fiction stuff ends up, like you said, in a sense, predicting what will come in the future. And some of that stuff would have happened even if nobody wrote it down. I mean, maybe. If a science fiction author is thinking about it, somebody else out there is likely thinking about it as well. And it's out there in the the spirit of humanity, you might say, in the
out there in
public consciousness,
the
or
zeitgeist.
the public subconscious, whatever you want to call it. The thoughts floating around out there being passed in bits and pieces from one human to another, and once in a while it coalesces and becomes something that you could describe. And in one of those cases, somewhere along the way, somebody might just put that together into something tangible and make a real thing out of it.
Is it all right if I show something?
Yeah.
Is it all right if I show something?
It's not my stream.
Show something.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? I mean,
well, I wasn't even going to say anything about that, but I guess I should now. In 25 minutes, the weather report's going to start on Answers in Atheism. But what I wanted to mention is, based on what you were talking about, I'm going to be on Godless Granny's channel tonight with a panel, and we were told to bring our favorite geek topics. And so I've been watching the original Star Trek series. I rebooted that here a week or so ago, and I've been binge watching it. And so the topic I'm bringing is about Star Trek and all the things that came out of that. I was watching an episode the other day from season 2, and they were the one Mirror Mirror, where they're in a parallel universe. And then Kirk tells his team that's with him, use your communicators for private messages. And it made me chuckle because, okay, so now we all have a communicator in our pocket that,
does private messaging.
Yeah. There's a lot of other things where, you kind of pointed out that it's kind of wrong to say that they're prophets, because it's more of a thing where, like you said, they put an idea out there in the zeitgeist, or some other human. If one human being has a particular idea, chances are there's a human being somewhere else that has that same idea.
Yeah, they were a part of passing an idea around, a part of developing an idea, and we humans collectively develop ideas. And we collectively play parts in producing the technology and the stuff that we're going to have in our future. That this is it's not an individual, like the Thomas Edison thing. He didn't invent the light bulb. He didn't even personally come up with the filament that improved the light bulb. He hired other people to do it, and that is, technically that's a conspiracy. And this is one of the things I've been trying to get people to understand for years, that we've got rich, powerful people out there who don't want us to know there's such a thing as a conspiracy, for 2 reasons. One, because they're doing some conspiracies they'd rather we don't notice they're doing, because they're not good conspiracies. And the other, because they don't want us to realize that we can conspire to do good things that benefit us, that benefit everyone, and then that gives everyone the power, not just the people who already have it.
Very recent example of that, the shit that happened on Wall Street, where people got together and made that brokerage house lose tons of money because they were trying to short stock.
GameStop?
Yeah, that GameStop thing, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, and no, we humans need to learn to wield such, devices, such tools in the best ways that we can. And, you want to stop somebody from doing something bad, we can conspire to do that. You want to, punish them for having done something bad, we can do that too. But should we? There is that question of, should we? We get this cancel culture out there where people say, tell everybody, don't watch this show, like this one here. I noticed my last night's episode of this, my episode 2 of All Gods Invited. There was a downvote. Somebody, gave it the thumbs down. I left a comment saying thank you for that. Because at least that tells me that there was somebody there, who wasn't just, there to think like everybody else who was there. Somebody had a different thought, and it shows I've reached some diversity. So good. Thanks for letting me know that. If anybody else wants to give me a downvote, go ahead.
Well, when it comes to the algorithm, there's no difference between an upvote and a downvote, really.
Yeah, I mean, either way. I mean, if you give me a downvote, you're helping my channel technically. I mean, I'd prefer the upvote, but if you got to decide between not voting at all and giving me the downvote, yeah, please by all means give me the downvote. I'd appreciate it, because helps the channel out, and helps me to get this series going and try to make something serious out of the series. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I would really like to do, is to help humanity learn to conspire in good ways. And when people talk about like God did this and God did that, what do they really mean? Because if what they really mean is that that humans did something in the name of their God, well, then they didn't really need the name of their God to do it, did they? They only needed the conspiracy. They only needed to, well, as the term conspire, it comes from a Latin phrase meaning to breathe together. I mean, it's literally just working together on something. It's just collaborating, cooperating, and we don't need a God to do that.
We are conspiring right now.
Yeah, we're conspiring right now, and so yeah, I should let this go and head over to answers in atheism for the weather report.
So in future versions of this, what do you think of the idea of trying to come up with a steel man God, or trying to further define what the hell they're talking about? Because I really want to know.
I'd like to do that with as many of them as possible, and also to try to get a generalized idea of and not necessarily just find out what it is, but maybe even evolve what it will be, maybe even guide the evolution of the God concept. Because right now, the way I see it, the God concept is doing more harm than good. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. If there are any beings out there that consider themselves a God, that want to come on and have their talk about why they consider themselves a God, or people that feel they're representing some God that want to talk about that, that would be fine as well. Darth Dawkins just came in, so I'm gonna add that one more person. Try to finish my sentence first. That's what it says.
Oh my God! See if it's really him. Good luck.
Yeah, you might as well forget about stopping for the weather.
Okay,
report.
Well, maybe I won't get over to the weather report, but yeah, I would like to to mention it's a decent show. So anybody who's sees this in the future, check it out. It's on Answers in Atheism. The channel used to be called Speed of Sound of Gravity. Long story behind that, but right now you should be able to search it either way and find it.
So can I say something real quick?
I have to leave.
To answer your question, to me, God is born in man's discomfort at not knowing the answer to something. So if they're not sure what the answer is to a certain thing, then they invent this being that must be the answer that did it.
Yeah. So just to be clear, because you picked the name Real Bible God, and you get the icon there to go along with it. Well, he said he had to go get the show.
Yeah,
he had to go. Yeah, I just noticed something changed. And I didn't quite hear what he had said.
Is he backstage?
Sometimes.
Is he backstage?
No, he disappeared completely.
No, I mean Darth Dawkins.
Oh, Darth. Yeah, I'm gonna add Darth in there. So there we got that. And yeah, maybe I won't get over to the weather report, but I did want to ask you about that though. Had you intended when you picked that avatar and stuff, you spoke a little bit on that. Had you intended to actually speak on behalf of that particular God of the Bible, or
just kind of got caught when you didn't notice me and I had to reveal who I was. Yeah, I mean because
I see. Okay, so you're going to come
I,
in character as a role,
right,
as a
right, and I was a Christian for 35 years, and then I finally read the Bible and realized that God wasn't the good guy in that book. So
okay. Well, if you want to switch into character, I mean, I think it's better that way
no,
anyway.
it's kind of ruined. It's kind of ruined now.
It's kind of ruined. See, me as an actor, I can switch into character and not worry about the fact that people know who I am.
Right. I mean, I'm not worried about it. It's just like the moment's gone.
But I hear you. I have actually had people that knew I was in character and ended up thinking that the character was real anyway.
Right.
That's what you call doing your job too well.
I think also in the Bible, I don't think the devil or the Satan ever did anything without God's approval.
Mm.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it is the right one, the real one. All right, I thought it was fake.
To evaluate the God of the Bible, either externally or internally, that God is not the ultimate good character would be incoherent either way.
I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying. Are you asserting that the Bible's God is the ultimate good character?
No, I was commenting on what Real was saying, that after reading the Bible, he realized that God was not the ultimate good character. Well, the only way that you'd be able to make that evaluation would either be from an external critique or an internal critique. Okay, an external critique would be that you don't hold to the biblical worldview, and that you would hold that the God of the Bible would not be good according to whatever non-Christian God world you would hold to. That would be incoherent. You wouldn't be able to instantiate that. If you did it in an internal critique that the God of the Bible is good, there wouldn't be any external standard from within the Christian worldview that you could appeal to that God was not good. So either way, in an external or an internal critique, you wouldn't be able to say that God is not good.
I would highly disagree with that, and let me explain why.
I gotta go, but I just want to say, Garth, that's completely false. Okay, because the fact of the matter is even if you're going to do an internal critique and you're going to read the words that are in the Bible, there is no doubt but they are describing a horrible being. I know I'm better than the Christian God.
You haven't justified.
Wait a minute. I'm not done.
I'll get to it.
You hate getting interrupted. I hate it too. All right, here, check it out.
You mean like what you did to me on the Rages show?
Wait a minute. The reason I know I am.
Did you interrupt me on the Raging Atheist?
Just let him talk for now because he's.
Okay.
You didn't interrupt me on the Raging Atheist show?
Garth, let him talk for now because he's got to go.
I got one sentence to say, and then I'm leaving anyway. The way I know I am better than the God in your Bible is that I would never drown a baby. Okay? That's the only thing I need to know.
Okay, well, where did you get the idea that there were babies drowned?
From reading the Bible.
Where's that?
Where does it say babies were drowned in the Bible?
It's the Noah's Ark story.
Darth, that is the dumbest question I've ever been asked by a Christian.
All right.
If you're intelligent, yeah. Well, here's the problem. Okay, this is presupposing the Bible says the Lord opens the womb, the Lord closes the womb. If you're going to critique the God of the Bible internally, right, and you're going to say God drowned babies, first of all, you have to. It could be the case, unless you rule it out, that God could have closed the wombs for a period of time, and that only adults were alive on the planet at the time.
Well, I mean, sure, you can magic it away, but you could also magic away all the people.
No, I didn't magic it away. Now listen to me.
You just did. Wait. Hear me out, okay? Because you asked something, and I was going to answer it, and then he had to, talk before he left. So just, if you would, let me address this. You're saying that you have to either look at it from inside of the Christian viewpoint or outside of the Christian viewpoint. The way I see it, there are at least millions of Christian viewpoints. We each have our own personal viewpoint. We look at it from inside of our own viewpoint. whether we like it or not. We can try to look at it from someone else's viewpoint, but all we're doing is emulating someone else's viewpoint from a portion of our own viewpoint. So there are some limitations to that. But to critique the Bible's God only requires that you have an opinion about what is good and what is bad. That opinion doesn't have to be inside of the Christian viewpoint. It doesn't have to be outside of the Christian viewpoint. It doesn't have to be all in or all out, or even partially in or partially out.
Yes, it does.
It absolutely does not. It has to be your
incorrect.
Opinion. That's all it has to be.
That's incorrect. Okay. Then if the opinion will either be an external,
then it also has to be in or out of the tooth fairy story.
Well, I'll explain to you why it is. Would you like to hear it?
Did you hear what I just said? Will you agree with me on that? That if it has to be in or out of the Christian viewpoint, it has to be in or out of the tooth fairy viewpoint as well?
No, I said in between
then
external.
You're contradicting
I'm trying
yourself
to answer.
because
I'm trying to answer.
There's absolutely
Did you want me to? I tried to
answer.
answer you. You cut me off. Do you
Well,
want me to answer?
I was answering you, and you cut me off first. So, but go ahead.
Okay. The only time I interject is for the purpose of clarification. It's not to troll or derail anybody.
Fair enough.
Now, if you're going to evaluate the God of the Bible, right, you will either do it from an external critique or an internal critique. One where you an internal critique would be that you presuppose the actuality of the God of the Bible in order to criticize him. An external critique would mean you don't presuppose the God of the Bible, right? Either way, you would not coherently be able to instantiate a value judgment. Okay, you could offer a value judgment that was vacuous, that was not substantive.
You just did.
Okay, what was that?
I said you just did.
What did I say that was not substantive?
That we have to evaluate the God of the Bible either by presupposing or by not presupposing. That not presupposing makes it vacuous. That's vacuous. Because we should not be presupposing. We should not be presupposing anything. We should be supposing things only once we've got enough evidence and reason to suppose things.
You cannot even offer one coherent proposition without at least one or more fundamental presuppositions. Okay. Propositions are.
I disagree.
Can I finish, please? Well, let me tell you why that's incorrect.
I'm just disagreeing with you.
All right, I'm going to tell you why that's incorrect. Right? Propositions only have merit is if they're context and worldview specific. If a proposition is not worldview specific, then the proposition cannot be regarded as true or false because it doesn't reside in any worldview. So it would then be vacuous.
I view the world. That is my worldview. I view the world. You also view the world. Now, if you want to take on someone else's worldview and try to make it your own, you can do that, and you can claim that, and you can label yourself with that label. But you will never have their worldview. You will always have your worldview. You will have a variation of your worldview that approximates the worldview that you're trying to approximate. And it will never actually be that external worldview. It's always going to be your internal worldview.
Did you understand what I said?
Yes, I understood what you said. And
Can you repeat back to me in one sentence what I said?
No, I don't believe I can. Not at this point. No, I could have right after you said it, but no, not at this point. I don't believe I can do that in one sentence.
Can you have an intelligible? Can you have an intelligible, meaningful sentence or proposition that has no context?
Why would it have to have no context?
I said, can you have a meaningful? I'll repeat the question.
No. The answer is no. You can't. But it doesn't have to have presupposition as a context.
That's false.
No, that's not false.
Let me explain.
What you did is you asked a question that needs clarification.
I don't think you're not understanding. You're truly not understanding my point.
I am truly understanding.
Okay.
Apparently,
you cannot. Whenever, if you speak propositions, it doesn't matter what the propositions are. You have already agreed, okay, that propositions, in order to be non-vacuous, in order for a proposition to be at least intelligible, It has to have a worldview context. Otherwise,
No,
it's
no,
vacuous.
no. A context, yes. It doesn't have to be a worldview context.
Yeah,
It has
the
to be a
worldview is the
context.
context. Worldview is another term for
It
metaphysical
probably
context.
is.
It's like
It probably is going to be a worldview context because it's happening inside of your brain, and your brain
You're not understanding.
views the world through your senses and your
You're
thoughts.
truly listen. I don't
For
mean any
me-
disrespect to you. You're truly not understanding.
Absolutely, I am understanding you, and
No, you're not.
And I also have already told you that you're wrong, and I was going to explain how you're wrong, but you haven't given me the chance to do that. So
Okay.
at this point, I don't even remember what my explanation was going to be anymore.
Okay, well, here's
because
the
you
problem.
really aren't giving me the opportunity to
How can you
to
tell me?
correct you when you're wrong.
I'm going to ask you a very simple question. All right? Is anything impossible?
Yes.
Okay. What is it that is fundamental and foundational in reality that imposes that?
What is
The
what is
laws of
fundamental and
physics?
foundational in
I
reality
don't know.
that opposes something being impossible?
No, I didn't say opposes. I asked you
I heard you
because
wrong.
you were
then, I
going to
think.
tell me. You were going to tell me that what I said was wrong.
Oh yes,
Now,
what
I'm
you said
asking
was
you
wrong.
a question. Okay. Now, in order for you to say to me that something that I said is wrong, then that presupposes that at least one or more things is impossible. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what
pretty
is
much.
it? What is it? Okay. Now, so you believe in your world that one or more things are impossible.
No, I don't believe in my world. No, that's not
Right.
how
All right.
that's not how
Yeah,
believing something works. I don't
Let me-
believe in my world
Let me.
because I can't step
Okay. Can
out
I
of my
explain something
world.
to you?
I cannot
Can
step out
we
of
have
my
a
world.
conversation here? Listen,
I
can
cannot
we have a
step
conversation
out
here?
of my world at all.
No. Anytime any of us speak, we are speaking out of our worldview. It's inescapable. Okay? This is not debatable.
You can
Right.
call it that if you want. It seems kind of senseless to do. That's kind of like me
I don't
saying
think-
I'm
listen,
speaking
I don't think
out of
you-
words.
Dag, I don't think you're understanding this. All right?
I am understanding you, but I don't understand the point
Okay.
to it.
Anytime we speak, even if we're speaking conceptually about another worldview to analyze it, whenever we make propositions that are implied to be true, right? Even talking about other worldviews that we don't hold to, the truth value of our propositions can only be the case if it emanates from our worldview, right? Now, this is not a debatable thing. It's not controversial.
I mean, you're speaking in nonsensical tautologies.
All right, I'll
It
try
really
to.
doesn't.
I'll
It
try.
really
I'll
does.
try to.
I
I'll try to break it
understand what
down
you're
for you.
saying, but
Well,
I
I'm
understand
willing-
what you're saying.
Are you
but
willing
it's-
to learn for a second?
for a second?
Did I go now?
Are you implying
Yeah,
that I
I'm
don't
trying-
generally learn? I mean,
what
I,
I'm, sa-
I'm
what I'm, what you,
I do
you're
a lot
not
of
clearly understanding. You're not understanding what I'm saying to you, right? Now, in order for you to say,
First off, I'm gonna mute you for a while, and you can hang around. You can come back and talk if you want. But I am just going to go ahead
Why?
and mute you
Why
for
are
a
you
while,
muting
and I
me?
will explain why. Okay, because you are making claims about me and claims about me and claims about me and claims about me, and you're not letting me speak for me. You're speaking for me. Now, if you've got a God you want to speak on behalf of, go ahead, speak on behalf of your God, but do so admitting that you're speaking on behalf of your God, because I've invited your God to show up here and speak for himself.
Hi,
If your
I'm
God
here.
can't or won't speak for himself. What's
Nobody
that?
got the joke?
What's the joke?
You asked for God, I'm here. Never
Oh,
mind.
okay. I get it.
Ah.
well,
any
I haven't
rate-
mentioned anything in my worldview. I'm trying to get to a point. Okay, you said what I
Well,
said.
I was trying to
wrong.
make a point, and I muted you
Okay.
for a reason. You just unmuted
Okay.
yourself, and I got interrupted, but I wasn't done yet. Any rate, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry about that. I
but-
was making a joke.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it's all right.
In order for you,
go ahead, but please refrain from telling me about me, because I know me better than you do.
well, I'm just evaluating the content of your words. Okay. Now,
And I'm
When you
evaluating
say
the
that-
content of your
okay,
words,
can
and I
I-
find them quite
okay.
vacuous. But go ahead.
you complain. You said that I was over talking you. You're not following your own.
I'm not
principle.
complaining about it. I stated the fact. Yes, we're both doing it.
Okay. Now,
Go ahead.
when you say, in order for you to say, from your point of view, right, that anything is wrong, that presupposes that some things are impossible.
No, it doesn't.
And you said, it does, and I'll tell you
no,
why.
it really
Okay?
doesn't.
Okay, do you want me to
I
explain
can
it to you
state
or
that
not?
some things are not possible. I'm not presupposing that.
Okay, all right. Look. You're truly not understanding this, right?
I am fully understanding you. I'm telling you you're wrong.
Can
I'm
we have
telling you that
can we
you
have an
are
adult conversation
Okay, now I'm
here?
going to go ahead and
Okay,
remute you
okay,
and try
okay.
this again.
One at a time.
What I was trying to tell you is that you are looking at the world from your point of view, and you're trying to impose your point of view on me, and I don't have to conform to your point of view. I don't have to presuppose the things that you presuppose that I have to presuppose. I don't have to presuppose anything. I can actually look at the world around me. I can actually get to know the world around me, and I can actually suppose things once I've got reason to suppose them, or know things once I've got reasons to know them, rather than having to presuppose anything. My brain isn't required to do the things that you're claiming my brain is required to do.
Okay. Can I have a chance to respond, please?
Go ahead.
I'd like to finish a point. When I try to get through the point,
Please do.
which I cannot do in one or two sound bites, you immediately cut me off and then you mute me.
Okay, I'll mute me.
Okay? I don't want you to be mute. I want to have an interaction with you, right? I'm trying to explain to you why you have a misconception. Now, when you say that you believe that some things are impossible, in order to instantiate that, right, there's going to have to be something that imposes and secures what's possible and impossible. If you don't identify what that is, okay, then you will not have grounds to say what's impossible. So there must be something that imposes what is possible and impossible. Otherwise, the claim that some things... hold on one second, I got to turn my phone off.
Okay, while you're doing that, I just want to interject something briefly. That if you want to talk about if you want to talk about some things being impossible,
right.
I think it would make more sense to wait until we get to some specific things.
All right.
And decide. I'm trying to get to a point. You're right about parts of what you're saying.
I'm trying to get to a point. May I finish?
Sure.
I had to turn my phone off. All right.
Yep, I got it. I just want to interject. I haven't even finished
my point, and you've cut me off 3 times.
I wasn't cutting you off. I was just interjecting something while you were busy turning your phone off.
No, I'm talking about prior to that. I'm talking about prior to that. Okay. Now,
okay. Yes. So again, we did interrupt each other.
No, you deliberately cut me off because I didn't finish my point. I'm trying to explain something to you.
If you have
I'm trying to explain something to you.
You know what? Do you believe in a God?
Okay. What we're talking about right now, I will be glad.
I want an answer to that question. Okay.
I will be glad to address what I believe momentarily. Okay.
Do you believe in a God?
Listen to me, Dad.
I
will be glad to discuss with you momentarily what my metaphysic is, but I would like to finish my point that I was making that you have cut me off now 4 times.
Well, the reason why I'm asking if you believe in a God is because I'm thinking maybe your God can figure out how to say what you're saying in a way that you haven't been able to.
You would be more apt to understand what I'm saying if you...
Because I have already heard things that you've said and disagreed with them, and you will not let me explain.
The whole time I've been on here, the whole time...
You will not let me explain why I disagree with the things I've already stated I disagree with, and yet you want to go on and add more to it and add more to it and add more to it and tell me that you're not done making your point. Well, you already made a point that I disagreed with, and I haven't even had a chance to address the point that you disagreed with. In fact, you've made multiple points that I disagreed with, and I haven't had a chance to address the multiple points that I disagreed with, and you want to keep adding points to the points to make your point. Well, your point apparently is a compound point. And maybe there's no end to that point. I don't know. Maybe it does end. If it ends, then please go ahead, finish it, end it. Let's get to that point so we can then discuss it. Yes,
You've now
I did
cut me
that
off.
because you cut me off, and
This
because
is-
I was going to address what I disagreed with, and I can't even remember at this point in time what were the various things that I disagreed with, because you keep cutting me off and not letting me express my disagreement when I have a disagreement, but instead insisting that you have to finish this compound point
No, that's not what
before
I'm
I
doing.
can
I'm
speak
trying to
about it.
explain
That
something.
is what you're doing. That is exactly what
trying.
you're doing. So
So
go ahead.
I'm trying to
try.
okay, so this is about the 5th time you haven't let me finish my point. Okay? Okay. Now, so are you going to let me finish my point? Because I
just finished
truly
that one. Yeah,
believe
go
that
ahead.
you. Okay. I truly believe you do not understand what I'm saying because I haven't even gotten to my conclusion.
I understand you believe that, and I've already told you that you're
Okay.
wrong.
All right.
about
See,
that.
and you just
I would
don't
explain
stop.
why you're wrong about that.
Can
but
I
you
say
won't let me.
something really
Go ahead.
quick?
You know,
Yes, please.
if we had a neutral moderator,
Okay.
if there was
Yeah,
a neutral
I'm trying
moderator,
I'm trying to
you
moderate.
wouldn't be
Okay.
conducting.
Okay, you want
Yeah.
an actual moderator? Fine, I'll moderate. You're muted again, okay? And you're going to stay that way until you try to be a little more reasonable. I mean, you're the one, after all, who just accused me of not having an actual moderator. Well, I didn't want to have to do this kind of stuff, moderating in this sort of a way. I would prefer to actually have a conversation, but I did name the program All Gods Invited. You're not presenting yourself as being a god. If you want to present yourself as being a god, say so, and I'll give you a little more leeway, because after all, that's what I opened the program up for. If you want to speak on behalf of a god, tell me you're speaking on behalf of a god, and that you're saying what the god wanted to say, and maybe they couldn't be here, and you can tell me why they couldn't be here, or whatever the case might be.
Okay, that's
this
the
program
6th
has
time
some
you've cut me
reasons
off.
behind it.
Look,
This
I know
is the
this
6th time you've cut me off.
Try 7. There.
Okay, I know
There's
this
7.
is your.
Now you're back, and now you're gone again. There's 8. I cut you off again. I mean, I can keep cutting you off again if you want. Now, see, Tanya just left. Okay, we lost another person because I'm having to deal with moderating you when you're complaining I don't have a moderator. Well, I mean, if you want to speak on behalf of a god, go ahead and speak on behalf of a god. If you want to spout nonsense at me, and then when I try to tell you that it's nonsense and why it's nonsense, and that I did understand it and I disagree with it, and you won't let me tell you why I disagree with it because you want to add another thing and another thing and another thing and tell me you're never done with your point, then
This is the
this
7th
is not
time
your
you've done
show.
it.
This is my show. Okay, okay. I think this is the 11th time there. How about let's go for 12. There, I've muted you again. I mean, I can keep this up all day if you want. This is my program. Okay, if I'm on your program sometime, if you've got a program, then you can be the one muting me, and you can do that all you want, and I won't be able to do a thing about it. I'm not doing this to be an asshole. I'm doing this because you're being an asshole. And when I try to tell you what you're wrong about, you won't let me. And then you want to tell me that I'm the one who's not letting you talk. Well, it's my program. I'm the one who gets to decide you talk or not. I'm the one who gets to decide. Okay, so go ahead, talk, and stop accusing me of things, and stop telling me about me, and make your point. Multiple point, as a compound point as it might be. Make your point if you've got one to make.
I've tried to several times, and every time I try to get to a point, you interrupt and mute me.
You've finished several points.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you actually have.
Okay, can you tell me the point I was trying to get across to you?
No, I can't, because you keep interrupting me when I try to, and then you move on to something else. And sorry, but my brain isn't as young as it used to be. I can't keep track of that stuff that long anymore. If you would have let me address the points you had already made after you had made them, when you asked whether I agreed or not, and I told you, no, I don't agree, and I wanted to explain why I don't agree, and then you won't let me do that. Okay, you're not the moderator here. You're not running this program. So, if you've got a point to make that you haven't made yet,
I'm trying to make it, but you won't let me.
Okay, well, it'll wait now. You can come back on another episode, or you can do it later in this one. But Otangelo just came in.
Why do you keep cutting me off?
Why do you keep cutting me off?
I haven't finished my point yet.
I was in the middle of a sentence when you asked me why I keep cutting you off. Like I said, we're both doing this to each other.
Are you? Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you afraid of listening to me for 60 seconds to finish my point without interrupting me?
Go ahead. 60 seconds. You
Okay,
got that.
so you're not going to interrupt me for 60
I'll give
seconds.
you more than 60 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Now, when you tell me I'm wrong about something, it presupposes that some things are impossible. Because if nothing is impossible, then you can't say anything is wrong. Okay? Do you understand that first point? So do you agree with that? No? Okay, if nothing is impossible, then how can anybody stipulate anything is wrong? You don't have an answer to that? If nothing's impossible, can we assert that anything is wrong? Can you hear me? Okay, well, I'm asking you a question. If nothing is impossible, can we stipulate that anything is wrong? Do you have an answer? Okay, could you tell me?
I was giving you at least your 60 seconds.
No,
did
no,
that.
I
Have you
understand
made your
that,
point?
yeah.
Have you finished
Okay.
your point during your 60 seconds? Because it doesn't
Okay,
seem to me
so
you had. It
if
seems to me
nothing-
that you wanted to keep asking me things to have me interrupt
just wanna
you
make
and
sure
then
that you
accuse me of
understood my-
interrupting again.
I just want to understand. See if
Well,
you just
I nodded.
understood.
Yeah, I understood. I'm
Okay, all right.
doing my
all
best
right.
to
So,
not interrupt you.
okay, so in
You
order,
don't
in
make it
order
easy
for,
when you're insisting that I interrupt you.
okay, so in order for you to stipulate that something that I said is wrong, then at least one or more things have to be impossible. But in order for there to be
No, that's not
some
true.
may I finish, please?
Sure, but I just
Okay.
disagreed with
All
you.
right, how can something be wrong if nothing is impossible?
That wasn't what you said. You said in order to stipulate it. You can stipulate anything that your brain, decides.
When I say
to
stipulate, I mean assert and defend.
Oh, assert and defend. Okay, well, I wouldn't have put and defend in a definition of stipulate. So now I understand what you meant better. Thank you for that.
Okay. Can you say that anything is wrong and defend it if nothing is impossible?
I don't think that nothing is impossible, so I think the context is incoherent.
Okay.
I
what
mean,
I'm saying to you is
there are things that are impossible.
Okay. Now
we've already established
that. Okay. So what is it at a fundamental level that imposes and secures what's impossible?
I don't think anything has to impose and secure what is impossible.
Then why is anything
things
impossible?
Things that are impossible are impossible.
What
and I don't think any of us has a complete list of everything that's impossible or a complete list of what makes things impossible that are impossible.
Is there something,
because after all,
is there something that makes it impossible? Is there something that imposes impossibility?
Falling outside of the realm of possibility makes something impossible.
No, I want to know, okay,
that's an answer.
Okay,
I'm not talking about metaphysics. I'm saying that is by definition what makes something impossible.
Okay, what is it that imposes why anything is impossible?
Who says anything has to impose it? Who says that anything that's impossible has to stay impossible? We don't know that things that are impossible have to stay impossible. They seem to consistently stay impossible, but
I'm not talking about what seems to be.
There is nothing that gives us any
me
proof that anything necessarily will always.
Can you tell me?
Impossible.
So there's nothing that will always be impossible in your opinion?
That's not what I said. I said we don't have any proof that will always be the case. We might not exist anymore if the universe changes, for example, in such a way that a round square might suddenly be a thing, or a married bachelor might suddenly be possible. If that was the case, then we would probably not exist anymore because the rules of logic that allow us to exist wouldn't work anymore.
Okay. Can you tell me one thing is impossible and what imposes that?
A square circle. And
what would make
geometry.
What would make that impossible?
geometry.
Okay, is geometry an absolute?
I'm not sure what you mean by an absolute in that context.
Is geometry fixed and unchanging?
No, geometry is evolving. Well, the geometry as defined by humans is evolving.
Okay.
Geometry in the physical sense
You
of
said
the geometry of our universe may or may not be evolving. It's really hard to be sure.
Okay. So geometry would not impose impossibility then?
Well, the rules of geometry as a subject impose certain things. Squares and circles.
I'm not talking about ideas
squares
in people's
and circles
heads.
and round things have definitions.
Yeah, I know all this.
Definitions impose qualities on the things that they define.
Okay, the definitions.
And a square circle would be a circle that has a property that a circle can't have.
So it would just be inconsistent.
Are defined as being something other than square. So this is just this is human brain.
I'm gonna leave in a second. I'm trying to have a back and forth conversation.
Okay, fair enough.
You're not doing it. Okay.
I kind of am.
You're not.
You're telling me about me. No, I'm here. I'm in on this conversation.
Yeah, no,
so I know what I am and I'm not.
You're in a zone right now.
I did want to let.
It's like you're not even talking with me. Yeah, it's not even like you're interacting with me.
In that case, I'll just mute you again because you
can do that.
Because again, you're accusing me of things that aren't happening here and that I'm not.
No, you're not having an adult interaction with me.
Really?
No, you're just talking past me.
And if you're out there and you want to come back, feel free. Otangelo, did you want to say something? I just kicked Darth Dawkins from the studio. I didn't know how that worked. That wasn't exactly what I had meant to do. Oh, sorry. I guess I hadn't added you. I had meant to add you, and I didn't realize I didn't do that. Otangelo, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm still learning this thing, and I hadn't actually meant to kick Darth from the studio entirely. What I meant to do was stick him backstage for a while and let you talk. I did that wrong. Darth, if you're out there, I apologize for that. That was not my intention. I did intend to take you out for a while and let Otangelo talk because you were monopolizing the time for too long there. And, I want to try to do this fairly, but I do plan on having other episodes of this. Darth Dawkins wants to come back and speak on another episode. He's welcome to do that. But repeatedly telling me things about myself that aren't true isn't really a good way to hold a conversation with me.
Let him in again. If he's backstage, you can just.
He's not backstage. No, like I said, that was what I had intended to do, but I accidentally I picked the wrong option. I didn't realize that was going to take him out entirely.
So if he wants to come back in, I have never had a direct conversation with him, and I would like to make a role play and be on the atheist side and then have a conversation with him. Okay.
Oh, that would have been interesting. I would have liked to have seen that, but I made a mistake in there, and I'm not omniscient, so I don't know everything about how this software works. I'm figuring it out as I go.
But I think that Darty makes a good case, actually, Donald. And
I really don't, and I tried to address why, but he never really gave me the opportunity. And there were so many points that he was just, in my opinion, dead wrong about. And I will say it's my opinion. It is my point of view. But that's one of the things, because he's talking about it as if I don't have a point of view, as if I have to pick someone else's point of view and use that point of view, or else I can't say anything. And I mean, if you want to have a conversation where people can understand you, then yes, I would agree that you have to find some common ground for communication. For example, we're both speaking the English language. It's something that, without having said straight out, let's speak the English language with each other, we've nonetheless, agreed to do that. And, if your English is a different dialect than my English, we're still not speaking the same idiolect. We're still maybe not even speaking the same dialect of English, but we're speaking at least the same language. And so we've got some sort of an agreement. And in that sense, I would agree with him that if you want to be able to communicate points with each other, you have to find some common ground. The common ground that I find that, I don't need to have a world view. I need a world. I'm in a world. And yes, I can't help the fact that I view the world, and therefore I personally have a worldview, but I don't have to borrow a worldview from anyone. I don't have to take a Christian worldview or a Muslim worldview or a Buddhist worldview or, any other kind of worldview and borrow it, because I have the world around me that I can view as it happens, as it's changing around me. And if I'm presented with new information, that's why I was telling him, instead of saying, things that are impossible, why not talk about an impossible thing? Because then we can adapt as the situation comes along. We can talk about one thing at a time instead of having to, speak in vague groups of vague things and, try to make points that are made of points that are made of points.
Well, one problem which I have with Dart is that he overtalks a lot, and he accuses the other side to overtalk, but he does it in the same sense. And just with you,
Yeah.
I mean, we were seeing he was overtalking you constantly, and you
Yeah.
saw.
And I agree, and I'm overtalking you right now, and I know that. I'm at least aware. And I don't mean to stop you from talking, by the way. That was actually meant as a demonstration. But yes, we do. People do that. It's part of conversing. Facial expressions. We can both. Well, you don't have your camera image up. I'm looking at a picture of you.
Put it on.
But
yeah, I can put it on.
But my point is, when we're talking face to face, or when we've got an image of each other to look at, facial expressions can happen in real time. Body languages can happen in real time, and both people can do them at the same time, so they don't have to interrupt each other. Now, when I was younger, when my hearing was better, and things like that, I mean, I could do a pretty good job of talking over someone and still listening to them. I don't do as good of a job of it now, but I spent so many years able to do that well, and able to do it so well that I didn't even understand how some people couldn't. That now it's really hard for me to adapt and adjust to the fact that I can't do that so well because my hearing isn't as good anymore, and that I'm not as good at multitasking as I used to be. So live and learn, but adaptation is sometimes a slow process. Anyway, go ahead, Otangelo. You still there?
Yeah, just a minute. I'll put my cam on. I don't like to have a one-to-one conversation where one has the cam on and the other has not. So
well, I can shut mine off if you want.
No. Just a minute here. I'll put it on so you can see my face expression.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna go. I was gonna end this a while ago and go over to the weather report on answers in atheism, which, yeah, I was telling Speed. I found that name rather humorous because technically atheism doesn't have any answers, but I understood what he meant by it though, because there are a lot of things associated with atheism that do have answers, and so there's that. But yeah, atheism itself technically doesn't have
I think
any
first
answers.
of all,
it's just a lack of something. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think we should go to define what atheism is. I see atheists do that all the time, trying to educate theists what atheism means.
Well, I'm not trying to define it. I'm just going with the definition that has been around since the inception of the concept. And I mean, if somebody wants to use a different definition, if they want to let me know what that definition is, I'll let them, define it and use that, and try to communicate with them in that context as well as I can. But no, I'm just referring to by default, just going from the etymology of the word, from the earlier usage of the word, from the most common usage of the word by people who have self-identified with the word, from a plethora of different things. The atheism is literally, it's just the word theism with a prefix on it. Now, of course, technically it's the word theist with a prefix put on, and then with the ist changed to an ism to match the word formation. So it's a little more complicated than that. But basically, it's just the word theism with an a prefix put on, meaning without. That's really all it is. And from a linguistic point of view, it really doesn't make any sense to even try to define it as anything more than that, because there isn't any necessity. I mean, you can use qualifying words to add to it if you mean something like, a practice that is atheistic, meaning that it's a practice that doesn't have any theistic qualities to it or any theistic beliefs behind it. You could call that an atheistic practice instead of just calling that atheism. There are ways of expressing other things that some people sometimes call atheism when what they really mean is these other things. And that's what I was saying, like what he was talking about. He did clarify this to me one time. Answers in atheism, he's basically really talking about humanism. That there is a humanistic point of view where you try to do what's best for humanity, and you can find some answers in that, because that has a bit of a body of knowledge and such around it. But atheism itself is just literally the lack of theism, and there's no answers in that. But on the bright side, it doesn't have any wrong answers.
Well, I think it can be wrong in the case that theism is true and that the God actually exists.
Well, but atheism doesn't say it's not, so it can't be wrong about that. That's what I mean.
It depends. If we take
atheism doesn't say anything, so it doesn't have anything to be wrong about. It doesn't have anything to be right about either.
Well, it depends. If we are talking about strong atheism, then the claim is that most likely there is no God.
Yeah, and there again, like I said, if you use qualifiers like that, if you add another word in to say that you mean something other than just atheism, strong atheism isn't just atheism. That's atheism plus something, and it's the something that you're talking about that has those qualities, not the atheism.
And I think the conversation becomes interesting when my counterpart actually makes a positive claim and tries to instantiate a worldview where a creator at the bottom of existence is not required. Now, coming back to what I think Dart gets right is following, that there is actually something which cannot be instantiated, and that is the fact that something cannot come from nothing. So there was never a philosophical, an actual
we don't necessarily
nothing.
know that.
Of course we do, because something cannot come from nothing, because nothing is the absence of something, of anything.
To me, it makes sense that something can't come from nothing. But just because it makes sense doesn't mean that it is necessarily the case. If you look at measurements in quantum mechanics, it would appear that the measurements are showing that something can and does come from nothing on a regular basis.
But that's not the philosophical nothing which you are probably talking about. I mean, we see constantly crowds.
It's not a philosophical nothing.
They are talking about virtual particles, which they claim come from nothing, but they are actually not nothing in a real sense, because they require a quantum vacuum in order to come and go.
Well, no, they don't necessarily require a quantum vacuum. As a matter of fact, I was just going to explain in what sense it's a nothing. And that is in the sense that a quantum vacuum, technically speaking, a quantum vacuum isn't something that we can measure. It is, a complete...
Not nothing. So it's not nothing, and then you have to explain where that quantum vacuum came from.
It is a lack of something else that is measurable. We measure certain things, and when we run out of those things that we can measure, that's what they're calling nothing. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't anything there at all. What it means is that there is nothing there that we have the tools and the means to measure. If we get better tools, maybe someday we'll be able to measure that, and it will turn out to be something, and maybe that is something coming from something. And like I said, that would make more sense. But as far as the actual evidence that we have, the evidence appears in some sense to indicate that there is something coming from nothing. But it's a specific kind of nothing it's coming from. It's a something measurable. Just let me finish the sentence, please. It's a something measurable coming from nothing measurable.
As soon as you invoke that something does something, in our case, that word or particles pop in and out, then it's not nothing anymore. It is something. And I am saying that something cannot come from absolutely nothing. And
Well, again, I would agree
I,
with you that that's likely. I don't know that it's necessarily the case
of course
because
it is. By
we don't know
definition,
what's
it's the
underneath the
case.
physics.
No, it's by definition the case, and we don't even have physics. It's
If
just
you would,
the meaning.
let me give you an example. If you would, let me give you an example of how it might not be the case. Take the concept of chaos. Chaos is unpredictable. Imagine we don't have this universe at all. Imagine we have a chaotic universe, a universe with no rules whatsoever, and in that universe there is nothing. We're starting with nothing, including rules. We've got literally nothing, the complete philosophical nothing. Well, if there is nothing, if there's not even rules, then there isn't anything preventing rules from coming into being or preventing stuff from coming into being. What kind of stuff could come into being? Well, we wouldn't know because there are no rules by which we could govern knowing in that sort of a realm. We're talking about a realm that doesn't have any rules on how to make something come into being or how not to make something come into being. We do have this mental concept of chaos that would allow that sort of thing. And if there's chaos underlying our universe, if there is chaos at the bottom, so to speak, then yeah, maybe we could get to a sort of a philosophical nothing where we've ran out of everything and what's left is the chaos. But then I would even call the chaos a something, but would it have to be? I mean, does it have to be a something? I don't know. And that's why I say that is something that I can agree with you that it seems reasonable. I don't like to do assumptions. I don't like to assume anything, so I don't want to assume that it is necessarily the case that something can't come from nothing. And it would be an assumption because we actually don't have any evidence that something can't come from nothing. What we do have is logic, which seems to make it reasonable to think that if something comes around, it comes from something, not from nothing. So on that much we're in agreement.
Okay, nothing is by definition the absence of anything, and it's obvious that from absolutely nothing something cannot emerge, and that should
obvious
be obvious.
Obvious or not, it's not evidential. It is again, yes, it seems reasonable from what we do know, but we don't have any nothing that we can examine to see what its properties are, to see what does nothing actually do. I mean, it seems logical that nothing wouldn't do anything because it isn't anything, so how could it do anything? But there again, we're talking about something that we have no experience with.
Donald,
So
we do not require experience in order to know that something cannot come from nothing, because nothing is the absence of anything, and that is logical. I don't require to show you that something.
I agree with the logic, but I disagree with the idea that we wouldn't require any kind of experience with it to actually know. We can come to logical conclusions. Our logical conclusions may or may not be correct. If we're talking about physical something coming from physical nothing, we have no experience to base that on. If you want to talk about logical something coming from logical nothing, then we're talking about an entirely different concept. I mean, we got to have a brain to do any thinking to come up with a concept in the first place, or something that does thinking. So sure, we could have a logical something come from a logical nothing, but then the logical something is coming from a physical something, meaning the brain that came up with it. So again, similarly, we might be able to get a physical something that comes from a physical nothing. Maybe there was a logical something that made the physical something. Maybe there's a God involved. I'm not proposing that as probable, But maybe, maybe there was a thinking being, non-physical, didn't have any kind of a body, didn't have a brain to think with, but somehow logicked itself into existence, and and then logicked matter into existence. We have no experience with such things, so we really can't say that that's an impossibility. What we can say is it doesn't mesh with the possibilities we've experienced.
Okay, what is the result of 0 adding to 0?
Well, generally speaking, that would be 0.
Okay, what is the result?
There
of
are different
0?
kinds of zeros.
What is the result of 0 multiplied by 0?
Again, generally speaking, that would be 0.
Okay,
there are different kinds of zeros.
No, I'm talking simply about 0, not about different kinds of zeros. The colloquial understanding of 0.
Yeah.
So you will always have
and that's
0.
where I clarified my answer. Yes.
So if you multiply nothing,
the same
by
as infinity
nothing,
plus infinity is infinity, and infinity times infinity is infinity.
So if you multiply nothing by nothing, what do you get?
Well, that depends on what you mean by nothing. Do you still mean
Nothing.
0, or do you mean something other than 0?
No, I mean nothing. I mean the contrast to something is
Well,
nothing.
I don't know
nothing
how
is nothing is
how
the
a nothing can be
absence.
multiplied.
Okay, my definition of nothing is it is the absence of anything.
Well, I don't see how you can multiply the absence of anything by anything.
Okay, so you have always nothing, right? Because nothing is the absence of
I didn't
anything.
say that. I said I don't see how you could multiply it.
Yeah, you can't even
if you've
do
got if say for example that in the space between the two Planck units of reality of our physical world, that somewhere in between those two Planck units there was nothing. Can I make a copy of that between two other Planck units? What would that even mean? I don't see that it's even a coherent thought to try to multiply nothing. To multiply 0, yes, because 0 is a quantity. You can put the 0 on a number line between other numbers, and you can mathematically figure out more or less what it is. And 0, by the way, is a problematic number in math. It ends up breaking some of the rules. So it's not something, it's not a concept we've entirely ironed out. And that's 0, which is a much more clearly defined concept than nothing. Nothing is still kind of vague.
So
again, because we have no experience with it.
So let's equal 0 to nothing then.
Well, yeah, and like I said, if you want to do that, if you want to say by nothing you mean 0, then of course we can apply anything to nothing. We can apply to 0.
Okay,
but then that doesn't translate
0?
to the physical world, because that's just math.
Yeah, can you go to 1 from 0 by adding up nothing?
Again, nothing isn't a number. If you mean by adding 0, then no. If you mean by adding nothing, then hypothetically, yeah, we'd have 1 nothing. You started with 0 nothings, you add a nothing to it, you've got 1 nothing. And if you add another nothing, you'd have 2 nothings. I don't know what would be the difference between 2 nothings and 1 nothing, because it seems to me that they'd be the same. But that's kind of like with our definition of 0, that 0 is a bit problematic because it breaks some of the rules. Nothing also seems to break some of the rules of things that we deal with. And I don't think we fully know how to set the rules for what nothing is and can do and can't do. These are some deep problems that we're still working on. If there's a creator out there who used to live in nothing and has had experience with nothing and can come and talk with us about nothing and how nothing works, they're invited to come join this program and do that, and that probably be a fascinating conversation. But we humans don't have experience with it.
So Donald, let me define nothing as the absence of anything.
Okay.
Okay, can something come from the absence of anything?
I don't know. It doesn't seem likely. I mean, if you have an absence of anything and you add another absence of anything to it, Have you added anything, or have you added nothing?
You added nothing, because you
you've added
have two
nothing.
quantities which
But
are
then-
nothing.
But then if you're treating the nothing as something that you can do stuff with and you're asking questions
But you
about,
can't.
then you
But
have
you
added
can't.
something, because the nothing
But
is
you
then a
can't.
something.
But you can't, because we are talking here about absolutely nothing.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, like we're talking about nothing.
So I come back. So I come back to my initial question: Can we get something from absolutely nothing?
Again, it doesn't seem likely.
Okay.
It
So
doesn't
can
seem,
you stick to that?
It doesn't seem any more or less likely that we could get something from nothing than that we could get physical reality from words.
Okay, I agree with you, because, I mean, words, they are abstract things which
Okay.
are in our minds. They are not in a causal relationship with the physical world.
So a statement like, God said, "Let there be light." I mean, I think we're in agreement that it doesn't seem likely that light could come from having said, "Let there be light." I mean, if God had minions out there that went and obeyed his orders, he say, "Let there be light," and they go and make light, whatever that is, okay, maybe that's coherent.
So what is your alternative?
But the whole God said, "Let there be light," and then there's light.
So what is your alternative, Donald?
Lots of alternatives. I mean,
Give one.
any alternative that is doable. Like I said, maybe
Which
God
one?
was real and had some minions. Maybe he had angels that the angels were doing his commands, or maybe God wasn't the only God. Maybe, I mean, well, if you read if you look at the Old Testament of the Bible in its original language, or at least as close as we can get to the original language, God starts out as plural. So the first 4 books of the Bible, there's no mention of Eloah. It's all Elohim. So we're talking about multiple gods, and so if one God said, "Let there be light," maybe that was an instruction for the other gods to work together and make this light thing happen. Now, why you would need gods for that, I don't know. But then, I'm not living in their reality. I'm living in my reality. Maybe we're like a computer simulation or something, from the viewpoint of their reality. And somebody said, "Hey, let's program in this light thing," and they made it happen. That wouldn't be something coming from nothing. That would be something from our point of view coming from nothing from our point of view, but there would still be a something from someone else's point of view that it came from. So sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so can nothing create light? So can nothing create light? And I mean an absolute nothing.
Again, I don't know. Not directly. I would say absolutely. I don't see any possibility that could do it directly.
I am talking about Donald. I am talking about the absence of anything.
Well, if the absence
I am
of
talking
anything
about the absence of anything.
Okay.
Can the absence of anything do something?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't see any reason to think it could, but I have no experience with it to speak from.
What do you need experience to give a positive answer to my question?
If the absence of anything can do something, then whatever that something is, however minute that something is that it can do, whether it's disturb someone's thoughts, maybe like maybe somebody thought about the absence of anything and that disturbed their thoughts, whatever the case might be, if the absence of anything can do something, then what could happen as an indirect result of that something it did is a matter of what things can do, not what the nothing can do. But I don't know that that we can really speak coherently about what nothing can or can't do. Only the fact that we have no experience with nothing doing anything.
Well, do you need experience? Because the mere
if you want to have a coherent
conversation
about what nothing can or can't do, and actually,
Donald, I don't talk
and
2 words and you
factually,
interrupt me. Donald, I speak 2 words. Yeah, but I wanted to finish what I was saying. And
try and answer your question.
I am talking here about half an hour, and this is the problem, Donald, because I didn't interrupt you like Dart was doing. I let you talk. but you talk about 5 minutes at a time, and then when I start to say something, then you immediately interrupt me. And this makes you basically having a monologue where you talk. You see, you cannot control you. You need to stop waiting until the counterpart finishes.
Now you're doing what Darth was doing, telling me about me. I'm here. I'm aware. Go ahead. You talk.
I mean, I am trying to have a conversation where both sides can expose their views. But that's the problem which I observed with you since the beginning when we had our first conversation, that you basically talk about 5 minutes at a time. Then I start saying something and you do not listen. You interrupt and then you want to go on. And if you rewind our conversation when we finish it, Donald, if you rewind and watch our conversation, then you will see that in the 30 minutes that we were talking here, 25 minutes at least you were talking and you didn't give me 5 minutes to make my case. And when I started to say something, you see,
I'm not going to rewind it and time it, but
you interrupt me again. You see, you interrupt me again.
Yes, because that's something I thought needed to be addressed.
We cannot have good conversations, Donald, if just one side talks. And when the other side wants,
you're making a claim about something mathematically measurable that I can't go back during the show. Wait a minute, Otangelo,
I was talking.
Please,
and be a little bit more gracious with your guest.
I'm going to mute you for a moment because I need to say this. Okay. When you're talking about something that is mathematically measurable, but we can't go back during the show and measure it. And I really don't want to go back and time both of us, but you're making a mathematical claim. It does seem that should be addressed at the time before just letting the whole thing move on. Because, I do, first off, I really think it's not that bad. Yes, you're right. I'm probably talking more than you, but I think you've exaggerated how much. And am I right? I don't know. But you're putting a number on it. That's a measurable thing. If anybody wants to go and do the measurement, they can do that. I don't feel like it. You can do it if you want. I may or may not take your word for it, but I don't think it's really important. The important thing is we're here to try to have a discussion. And you're right. I should let you talk more. So go ahead.
Well, I try to help you, Donald. It's not that I want to be obnoxious or something like that. I'm just telling you that it is not good if you have a conversation and you talk and the other side doesn't interrupt you. And then when I want to respond, it doesn't take me 20 seconds that I'm talking, and then you want to say something and you cannot control you. And you get in and you interrupt the other part. And that doesn't make good conversations.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you doing this with Dart as well. When he asked you something, you didn't say anything, and you said, yeah, you made your signs and so forth. But that was the moment for you to actually answer because he asked you something. But when I am talking, you have the impulse, you want to say something, and you cannot stop yourself. So you just interrupt the counterpart and make your case. And that doesn't make good conversations.
No, actually, when he asked me to give him a specific amount of time to make his point, that was not the time for me to talk. And he should have known that. He asked me to be silent and give him 60 seconds to make his point. And then he's trying to get me to speak during the time that he told me he needed me to be silent so he could make his point. So I did exactly that. And I did respond. I did nod and shake my head and things. I tried to respond in ways that wouldn't interrupt, but I did not interrupt. And it didn't work real well. Sometimes interruptions are kind of an important thing. And I'm not, I'm not disagreeing with you. Yes, we both do it. And I probably do it more than you do. I'm not meaning to, but at the same time, if we can try to, move towards something that this program is supposed to be for, I'd appreciate it, because this is about, the idea is we're supposed to invite gods here. If you've got a god, you can invite your god to come and speak for itself. And I would appreciate it if you do that. You don't have to tell me if you did it or if you didn't do it, but it would be nice if you can say, yes, I invited my God. If he shows up or something, If you want to speak on behalf of your God, that's fine. And if you want to speak on behalf of yourself, I mean, that's kind of assumed when you speak that you're, if you haven't said otherwise, you're just speaking on behalf of yourself, and that's fine. But like I said, it's not really what the program is for. It's just, something. I mean, I'm glad you're here because, I'm not all by myself talking to, well, basically the live chat. Although I could still talk to the live chat. I did that in, earlier episodes. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that if you want to have an exchange, then you need to permit the other side to actually develop the thought and wait until the other side ends to talk. That's important. But let's go ahead. I think that the question is, I don't know if nothing can do something. It has never been shown, but it is possible. Maybe nothing some way will pop up and do something. That is nonsense. And I see atheists making it all the time, because nothing is by definition the absence of anything. And then it's obvious that nothing cannot do something. So I would say that we can say with security, with certainty, that a state of nothing has never been, because otherwise there still would be nothing, because nothing has no causal powers. It has no emergent power to have emergent properties or to instantiate something, because it is nothing. So I think once we can come to an agreement that something must have always been, and that there has never been a state of absolutely nothing, then we can ask ourselves and come to the next question and ask, well, what is that something that probably has always been? So what do you think, Donald?
Well, I think we don't have to establish the thing that you said we have to establish in order to ask that question. And also, I have never come across an atheist proposing that something can come from nothing. There is a book, A Universe from Nothing, which is not talking about a philosophical nothing, but rather, as you mentioned earlier, the vacuum of space, which is something, and it has at the very least energy in it. And I don't know of any scientist or anybody who knows what they're talking about who would go as far as to propose that that anybody in their right mind thinks that there was ever a space-time with nothing in it, that it didn't have any energy or any volume or any mass or anything, that it was just a complete nothing, because how would that even be space-time? It just, the concept is incoherent. However, I don't know that it can't be. Those are two separate things. So when you say that, you come across atheists, claiming that, this is something that's possible, I'm not saying it's possible. I'm saying that I don't know for sure that it's impossible. Those are two separate statements. I don't know for sure that it is possible or that it is impossible. It seems likely impossible to me based on the things that I know.
So let me ask you something. Is a vacuum of energy in space something or nothing?
Well, the vacuum itself, I believe, is nothing. But what we're measuring as a vacuum is just a lack of being able to measure. So, yeah, we're measuring the nothing because, we're not measuring the something. But that doesn't mean there isn't something there in that physical space. What it means is that there isn't something there in that physical space that we're able to measure. If we've got tools that require a certain...
So is the physical space something or nothing? Yeah.
Huh? What was the question?
Is the physical space something or nothing?
As far as I can tell, the physical space itself is something.
Okay, so you have to account for it. What made it?
It doesn't necessarily have to have been made. Again, if you want to say there, if we agree that there always had to have been something, maybe the physical space is the thing that there always has to have been. I don't know. Again, I don't have any experience with a universe that doesn't have physical space. Maybe it's something underlying that made the physical space, and it wasn't the physical space that was always there. There are models under development right now that that indicate that the underlying something seems to be some sort of a network. And what that network is made of, or what it consists of, or what its properties are, that's still being worked out. We don't have the answers to that yet. But it does appear that space and time can come from something that isn't space and time. That there are computational processes that can produce the effects of space and time. And so some underlying network, some underlying field or something, I'm not sure exactly what you'd call it, but some underlying something that would be closer to nothing than empty space is, may very well be responsible for there being space and time. That what we call time is an effect of space, and what we call space is an effect of this underlying thing that space comes from. If you look at the recent work of Stephen Wolfram and his physics team, you'll find they're making a lot of progress in that direction. But we don't completely have the answers yet. What we do have is a better understanding of what we don't yet know, and some hints as to what directions we need to go in to figure it out so that it won't remain unknown.
Okay, I think maybe we can, I don't know if you want to end the conversation or if you want to come to another topic, because I think this goes nowhere.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we can talk again another time. You're welcome to come back. I should probably, end this program sometime soon anyway. I guess I can aim for an episode 4, at 10:25 p.m. Pacific time. I'm cramming my episodes together pretty much, and it's a little bit of a rough schedule to keep, in with doing other things. But yeah, I mean, I understand, I understand your argument, I think pretty well. And, I've heard you talk about the same kinds of stuff before, and you've talked with me about some of it before, not terribly in detail. But yeah, I think what it really comes down to is that there is an unknown. We agree with that much, that there is an unknown. The big difference, I think, is, that you try to fill that unknown in with something that some book tells you to fill it in with, and I don't. I recognize it as an unknown, and I leave it that way. And I go on exploring what I do know in the hopes of finding answers to those things I don't know. Because the world around me is what it is. And, I think the best way to understand the world we live in is to explore the world we live in, not to explore someone's claims about the world we live in.
Yeah. I see that the entire universe is permeated by information and is held up by information, even to the subatomic particles, and information comes always from a mind. Yeah. And
no, that's an assumption. I would disagree with that assumption.
I am talking not about descriptive information where we describe things, but about prescriptive information where someone actually says how something has to be made, like assembly information.
Let's take that and run with it for a moment, okay? What would be the simplest someone in that respect that you could come up with? What's the simplest kind of a mind, quote unquote mind, that you could imagine being able to make something happen in that respect?
A non-physical mind.
Yeah, but I mean the simplest. Yeah, okay, non-physical. Okay, non-physical. We got that. We're talking about information coming from something. What's the simplest thing that information can come from? Does it have to be an all-powerful God that walked with 2 people in a garden? Is that a requirement for something to be able to process information?
Well, I said a non-physical mind.
Okay, well then probably not. So I think we're in agreement that that's not a requirement, that we don't require a mind that has a physical body, as an example. Okay.
I agree with you, yeah.
Okay, what if it doesn't have to be a mind at all? What if all it needs to be is computation? What if what if computation is the underlying thing that information can come from?
And what
Computation meaning the
computes? And what computes? What is the mechanism that makes the computation?
Well, that's what we're still working on. And I think that the thing that's doing the computation is going to turn out to actually also be physical, but we're not seeing it as physical because we don't have the tools to measure it. So that falls into that nothing, that physical nothing, because it's nothing that we can measure. It's not something that we can measure, but it's there. And when enough of it adds up, we can get something that we can measure from that quantity. So we're not adding zero, we're adding something smaller than we can measure. And that's what I was talking about, different kinds of zeros. When you add what's called a potential zero, something that seems to be zero, but isn't actually zero, that does add up. Now, if you add an infinitesimal, hypothetically, from a mathematical point of view, you would have to add an infinitesimal an infinite number of times to get a finite. In other words, to get to something measurable, you'd have to add an infinite number of infinitesimals. But I don't think we're talking about infinitesimals. I think we're talking about something much smaller than the Planck length, much smaller than a Planck mass. It's smaller than the smallest units of energy we've ever actually dealt with in the physical world, because we don't have tools to deal with them. And the computations, again, being done by Stephen Wolfram's team, seem to be supporting this hypothesis quite strongly, that there is an underlying physical reality that we can simulate in a computer, that we can run simulations of these kinds of underlying computations that involve basically smaller amounts of mass than we have any way of measuring, because they're too small to be able to directly manipulate the things that we use to measure. That doesn't mean that they don't directly manipulate anything. I mean, for example, if you have a photon of light, and that photon of light, passes through a double slit, which, one photon can pass through both slits. We know that from, experimental results. Well, how does that photon pass through both slits? If it's only one thing, it shouldn't be able to pass through both slits. Well, if that one thing is a wave can pass through both slits, but a wave doesn't have a single set location that it can be detected in. It's spread out. So what if the wave is actually a wave of things that are much smaller than a photon? What if they're massless in the sense that a photon is massless, but actually do have some mass, in the sense that a photon has mass, because otherwise it wouldn't have a wavelength. It wouldn't have a frequency. I mean, if you take all of the energy out of a photon, the photon effectively disappears. So maybe we're talking about
I don't know
very,
of
very
any
small quantities of matter.
I don't know. Well, the fact is, Donald, that you are talking about hypothetical things which we do not know of if they are actually possible to instantiate instructional information. But we know by experience that you, me, we as human beings having intelligence and a mind, we can instantiate instructional assembly information and make complex things like machines and factories. So what we see in nature, and well, no, a bacterium cannot think and make machines and factories. It contains.
Well, it depends on what you call a machine and a factory.
Well, I call a protein an engineered machine, and I call cells factories.
Then there you go. By those definitions, yeah, a bacterium can make a factory. Now, I wouldn't generally call those factories, but in that sense, yeah, and they can self-replicate.
It can self-replicate, yes. In that sense, it can make another self, let's say. But a bacterium cannot invent a completely different factory, different from itself. It has no codes.
I absolutely disagree, because evolution has shown us that is not the case. That a bacterium can produce another bacterium similar to but not identical to itself, and that one can produce another one similar to but not identical to itself. And bacteria can swallow other bacteria. They can engulf each other and combine and become, again, something that's different than either of them was. There are all kinds of processes that can lead to something much more complex, made by what originally was one bacteria, one bacterium, the singular. So yeah, it is entirely possible, and we have seen enough of the processes to know that it is possible. It's not just a matter of it's hypothetically possible, but it is known to be possible. And what we haven't seen is the entire process, like from beginning to end, or, well, if you can call it an end, from something as simple as a bacteria to something as complex as we are. We haven't been able to watch that whole thing because it takes a really long time. And in the same sense, these universe models that Wolfram's team are putting together, it might turn out that to compute a tiny little volume of universe for a tiny fraction of a second might take years of computation on a powerful computer.
Well, what I am saying all the time, Donald, is that what we see is that genetic and epigenetic information directs the making of all the building blocks of life and machines and so forth. So you have here a situation where information instructs the making of molecular machines.
Well, it's not instructing.
Can I finish, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying I wouldn't use that word.
Yeah, can I finish, please? Yeah. And you have to account for, in regards of the origin of life, of how all these kind of things came to be. And I mean, I was ridiculed at Speed's channel because I brought up a science paper which calculates the odds to have a medium length protein with about 100 amino acids, and to have that by chance is 1 to 10 to the 130th power. And then the authors, they tried to explain that this is not a good argument for intelligent design.
I would go as far as to say that to have it by chance is impossible. It's not even mathematical. It's not even a mathematical extreme improbability.
That is exactly my point, and I have brought it many times.
No, it's not, because you just said that it was a computable probability. If it's a computable probability, then it's not impossible. I would say that to have it by chance, just by chance, is impossible, because we don't live in a universe that works that way.
The thing is that if you have the basic atoms and elements on a prebiotic Earth, like, let's say, like carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen and so forth, and then you have to make the building blocks, amino acids, DNA, RNA, phospholipids, carbohydrates, and so forth. Already to have that, there was no selection program extent which sorted out which building blocks would be used. Like,
but there is
amongst hundreds and hundreds of amino acids, how to make the selection of the 20 amino acids required in life. And there are over 20 problems which I am pointing out in an article which I wrote in regards of that. But let's even suppose that you have at one assembly site all the building blocks to make a protein there. Okay, I mean, that is the situation on a prebiotic Earth, where you eventually, let's suppose, you have these building blocks there, and then you have to get to amino acid polypeptide chain, which would fold itself into a functional protein, has function in a future cell. But then you have just one protein. You do not have the entire.
Why do we have to do this and have to do that? Where are you coming from on the you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do that?
Well, you need in order to have, as we know of, the smallest free living bacteria.
Why does it have to be what we know of?
Let me finish. You need about 1,350 proteins to have Pelagibacter. This is the smallest free living life form which we know of. There are some which are Yeah, we know of some which are simpler, like mycoplasma, but they do not have the engineering machinery and metabolic pathways to make actually the synthesize the basic building blocks like amino acids. So what you need is to explain for the smallest free living a life form, and that would be, as an example,
No, I
Pelagibacter.
disagree. I 100% disagree. No, you don't have to explain that. Not directly. That's what you seem to be trying to do, is to explain directly something that happens indirectly. You just mentioned smaller life forms that are lacking some, or smaller things that they're kind of almost life forms. They're lacking some essential quality to be able to live on their own. Well, because they're not living on their own. They don't have to. Maybe they've never had to. Maybe they've, always lived in an environment that supports them, and that environment might not have been the inside of a cell. It might have just been, the prebiotic earth was the environment that supports them. If you want to really go back to the basics, then you have to really go back to the basics. That's like when I was on your program, and Dr. Carter was accused me of having a very primitive view of life. Well, if we're talking about abiogenesis, we're talking about something so primitive, life so primitive, that it's not even life yet. So,
well, if it's
that's not saying I have a primitive view of life.
If it's not even life yet, then it's not life. So you need to draw. You need to let me finish. Donald, you're interrupting me. I'm unable to make a thought, and you following me. You are interrupting me, and it is not productive. I am trying to answer to your claim that, well, it's not.
Well, I was trying to answer you. I'm still trying to do that.
I'm not finishing. So you need to actually have a drawing line, and that drawing line is you have. Well, can I finish, please?
Yes, you can, but I disagree.
Well,
you don't have to have that line. You don't have to draw a line.
Well, can I finish, please? When I finish, then you can answer, okay? I think that saying, now we can suppose that there were protocells which were not alive yet, and they somehow complexified, and then somehow we got to the life forms which can self-replicate and perpetuate life and evolve. That is something which you don't have to start from the middle of, let's say, RNA or whatever you claim. You have to say, okay, the simplest life form that we know of is this. And I am mentioning again a free living bacteria like Pelagibacter. It has 1,350 proteins. It requires about 1.3 million nucleotides in order to specify the minimal protein set. So you have to try to explain, how do we get there, and then you start to investigate. What science can't. Science can't,
yes,
and not
science
easily.
can and has explained how we get there. Yes.
No, it does. It hasn't.
Yes.
In 70 years, science has.
Well,
never
I mean, you
been
can block
able
it out
to
all you want.
demonstrate.
You can deny it all you want. You can ignore it all you want. You can keep on, saying no, it hasn't. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to listen. You can do that all you want. It has, and I can easily explain it if you want me to.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You're talking about the end process of a very long time, and I'm not going to say how many years. I think you might have an idea, but a very long time of evolution taking place. Well, I say end process, end up to now, and it's still ongoing. This is a stage along the way. And if you want to talk about how we got there, then you have to talk about not an origin story, but a process of how we get there. Because evolution is a process, it's not an origin story. So if you look at the process of evolution, and you understand that if we start with evolving chemistry, which is not life, and you understand that there is physics involved in evolving chemistry, and you don't throw the physics out and replace it with, roll of a dice or some random thing. Physics has properties. Physics does computations, and if you allow those computations to process the information of the locations of atoms and the electrical fields of the electrons and the molecules and the electrons and the protons inside of the atoms, and the strong and weak force of the internal of the atom's nucleus, if you allow all of that physics to actually do what it does, which is compute things physically, then you can get more complex chemistry from less complex chemistry. We see it on a regular basis. And that more complex chemistry is just a matter of stages and adding small changes until you end up with larger changes that come from the smaller changes. There's absolutely nothing prohibitive about it. Coming to something like a bacterium, yes, you have some complex stuff that's going on in the bacterium that's interdependent on other complex stuff going on inside of the bacterium. But keep in mind that that's stuff that evolved with the other stuff. Those are both late in the game. If you want to go back earlier, take one of those simpler things that looks like it maybe could have been a life form, but it's lacking some component, and take that back to a stage where it needed that component, and you'll probably find that it had that component back then. It doesn't need it while it's living inside of a cell that does those things for it. So,
Okay.
so it's not surprising if it evolves away the ability to do
Can I resume what you said? I mean, that was kind of a gish galloping. Time evolution.
No, it's not gish galloping. It's
well, I'm resuming what
it was an explanation of one thing. I did not change topics. I didn't jump around. There was no gish gallop then. Don't accuse me. Don't accuse me of gish galloping when I was answering your question.
Well, you mentioned time evolution process, evolving chemistry, physics as information forces. You can get more complex.
Because all of that is involved in the process. As I said, it's not. As I said,
you're interrupting me again, Donald.
Yes, I'm interrupting you.
Respond to you, but
yes, I'm interrupting you, and now I'm muting you because yes, all of that is involved in the process. It is a process. It's not an origin story. If you want an origin story, the Bible provides one of those for you, and it doesn't answer any questions.
Okay, can I answer it now and
go ahead.
Without interruption? Okay, so you made here several claims, and I'll repeat them. Time, evolution process, evolving chemistry, physics as information forces. You can get more complex chemistry from less complex chemistry. There is nothing prohibitive about it. That stuff evolves from other stuff. So you are basically resuming the process of the origin of life to a lot of time and evolution, and that chemistry can complexify. So let's suppose that you have millions and millions of amino acids, and just the right set of about 20 amino acids laying around on the prebiotic earth. They would have the right configuration, be homochiral. They would be all left-handed. And now you need a minimal protein set in order to have the 1,350 proteins. You can even take the 500, which are about said to be there by mycoplasma. How do you get even one protein and the functional amino acid chain with a sequence which then actually will permit that the amino acids fold into a functional protein form?
Wow. You didn't understand a thing I said, did you? You repeated back some of the stuff I said, broken into pieces, but you repeated it back. You don't seem to have comprehended it at all.
Can you answer my question now?
Okay, you know how proteins are formed, right? A protein that can fold. You know how they're formed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it in
they are formed by other chemicals. They are formed by physical processes involving other chemicals. Do you know how those chemicals are formed?
I asked you a very precise question.
I'm giving you the answer because, as I said, it's not an origin story. There's no event that produced a protein. There is a process that produces that foldable protein. And that process involves going back. If you want to look at how that process worked and where it came from, then you're going to have to go back to before that protein was there.
Okay, I'm saying that you have the basic building blocks and you need to make that protein.
Laying around. How do you said they're laying around. Where's physics involved in that? You got basic building blocks laying around. You might as well have scattered them out in space, light years apart from each other, because the way you're talking about, there's no interaction involved. There's no physics involved. You're just talking about, waiting for a God to come along and make it. What about the universe making it?
What is your explanation? How do you get the functional
physics?
Physics.
Yeah, physics.
So let me ask you something. let's suppose that you require a sequence from 1 to 500, and you have just unguided events, just luck and physics to do so, to have that line up of 1 to 500.
That is entirely incoherent. I mean, first off, why are we requiring this 1 to 500? Second off, what does physics have to do with math, 1 to 500? Third off, what does chance have to do with physics? I mean, yeah, there are things that we call chance in physics because we don't have the information. So we say, okay, we don't know, therefore there is a chance. But
so do you
physics
agree
still
that
operates under certain rules. Physics behaves a certain way. It doesn't just randomize.
Let me ask you something. Does the amino acid chain which forms protein have to be specified and in a specific sequence in order that once the amino acids are bound together, that they will fold into function to have a form which then can permit function? Is that required, that sequence is very specific and complex?
If you're trying to get a specific result, then yeah, you have to have some sort of specified starting condition. It doesn't have to be there. There isn't necessarily just one starting condition. There can be other starting conditions. But yeah, you have to have a starting condition that will lead to that, because that's how physics works. You know, and how do you get that? And how do you get that starting condition? That's where you're failing. You're not asking that question. Instead of asking, how do we get the starting condition that gives us the folding protein? You're asking, how can the folding protein come from just randomness?
That's my question.
Well, it doesn't. It comes from physics and from a starting condition. If you have a starting condition, then that's the next question you should be asking, is how do we get to that starting condition? You're not asking that question. You're asking the wrong question. You're asking a question that doesn't make any sense, because nobody in their right mind is claiming that a folding protein comes from randomness. You know, it's not like a tornado went through a junkyard and you know, picked up some atoms and assembled them into a protein.
So you say that it comes from physics. First of all, physics is not a mechanism.
Yes, it is a mechanism. It very much is a mechanism.
How so?
How so? Physics is particles and fields and their interactions. They interact with each other in very mechanical, and predictable ways. Yes, it is very much a mechanism.
I am giving you. So let me make an analogy here, Donald. Let's suppose that you have the bricks all in front of you to make a wall. Okay.
All right.
Do you think physics will make you your wall?
Yes.
Have you seen that happening?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, a wall from a house.
From a house? You mean it's already part of a house?
A house.
I thought you were talking about bricks that weren't a wall yet.
You have you buy at a construction store the bricks to build a house.
Okay, so we're starting there. So I physically. So let me clarify. So I physically go to a physical hardware store and I physically buy physical bricks and I physically haul them somewhere, right? Am I with you so far?
Yes, they will deliver you the bricks in front of the building place where you will.
Okay, so they physically deliver the bricks. Got it.
Yes. Okay, so they are lined. They are just there randomly stocked up, and then you need to build.
Oh no! Wait! No! You just got done saying they delivered them. They didn't randomly deliver them. They physically delivered them.
Yes.
Are we in the same?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we are on the same. So they are there, and your intention is to build a house. Okay.
Okay.
And so you need to make the walls of the house, and it has a specific size, length, and heightness, and so forth. You know, you have a blueprint there, and
with you so far.
And it instructs you exactly how you need to make that wall. Okay.
Okay. So I'm physically looking at a physical blueprint. I'm physically gaining information in my physical brain from the physical blueprint. We're on the same page here, right? Go
yes,
on.
we are on the same page. So you have the building blocks there, all right?
Right.
So what do you need in order to make that wall?
More physics.
Not intelligence?
Well, my physical brain has physical processes that give me my intelligence. So,
Okay,
yeah,
but you
physics.
need but you need intelligence, right?
Well, not necessarily. If
Have
I
you seen a house?
if I happen to have a robot that had no intelligence at all, but had instructions on how to build the wall, I could have the robot build the wall with no intelligence at all.
Of course, but you need someone with intelligence to make the robot programmed to make the wall, right?
Supposedly.
Well,
But-
do you have an example where
But
you
you're
have
talking
no
about
mental...
but you're talking about building a house. A house
Yes.
is something that was designed by intelligence in the
Yeah.
first place. You're
Yeah.
talking about building something that is described in a blueprint, also made by something intelligent. You're
Yeah.
not talking about making a foldable protein. You're talking about building a
Well,
house.
I will come
And
there.
yes, it's still all physics.
Well, I'll come there. I'll try to come there, but I want to go you through. So,
Okay.
an
But
essential
at what point does
ingredient.
physics stop being, part of
Well,
the process? Because
the
that's
thing
where we're
is,
losing each other.
well, the thing is that one essential ingredient, in order for you to build the wall of the house, you need intelligence.
I disagree.
Okay, give me an example where you have seen non-intelligent mechanisms actually reading a blueprint and then having the materials and building a wall.
Oh, see, now
on that
you're going.
blueprint.
Okay, now you're going back to that again. You said building a wall of a house.
Yes,
Humans-
that's what.
Okay, humans had houses before they built them.
Well, but do you need intelligence to make the wall of the house and to understand the blueprint and to take the bricks and then to make the wall in based on that
Okay,
information?
if you want to do something that was designed to require intelligence to do it, then yes, you have to have the intelligence to do that thing that was designed to require intelligence to do it.
My question is, if you see
Again,
if you see,
I don't understand why you keep using these kinds of analogies, because they don't mesh with the kinds of things you're talking about. You're talking again about an end stage where we're at now, late in a process where we have intelligence, where intelligence has been around us, all around us for a very long time, and we have blueprints designed by intelligent people, or supposedly intelligent people, and we have bricks made by intelligent people. And you're taking all these intelligently made stuff that is all a product of humans, by the way, not a single one of them a product of a god, as far as I can tell. Not a single one of them made supernaturally, not a single one of them spoken into existence. All of them made not just by intelligence, but by intelligence and physics, and a lot of the stuff by physics without intelligence. So at what point do we get to where there is intelligence doing something without the physics, rather than physics doing something without the intelligence? Because we have lots of cases where we can demonstrate that physics does something with no need for intelligence. But I don't know of a single example that anyone can point to where we can say, here we can see that intelligence did something without physics.
so in order to make that house and to actually understand the blueprint and then to order the bricks to make the walls of that house in the way that it is prescribed to be, do you need intelligence or not?
Do you need physics?
No, I'm asking you. I don't
I'm
want
asking
another
you
question.
because I already
No,
answered your question. You set that one up that way. So you already know the answer to your question, but you don't seem to know the answer to my question.
Well,
do you need physics?
It is, Donald, it's difficult to move forward if you cannot
Well,
follow
I mean,
actually what I try to.
if you're
to
going to move
convey.
forward in a way that doesn't make any sense, then why should we even move forward? You're setting something up to fool yourself. If you want to fool yourself, then by all means, fool yourself. But you're not going to fool me, because I know there's
I'm not
physics
trying
involved.
to fool you. I'm not
Okay,
trying to fool
well, then
you.
let's
I am saying,
let's face the reality of what you're talking about. Is there or is there not physics required?
of course, is intelligence
Okay,
required?
then again, we're in agreement that there is
Okay.
physics required, and in your specific example, there is also intelligence required. That
Good.
does not mean that your specific example is the same as a foldable protein. It's not. The foldable protein does require physics. We have no evidence whatsoever that it requires an intelligence. Now, could evolution over much time be considered a sort of really slow intelligence? Maybe. And if you push it that way, then you could say there was a sort of an intelligence involved. But we have no evidence whatsoever of any kind of fast-acting intelligence involved in that. We have no evidence whatsoever of any kind of a supernatural intelligence involved in anything. So if you want to extrapolate from that to say that, a god must have created the protein, well, then why do we see proteins forming naturally now through physics and not through God poofing proteins into existence?
Through physics?
Yeah, physics. Physics is producing proteins now.
Cells produce proteins, and the
And they
molecular
are physical.
machinery makes. But you have to ask how that all came to be. How the state of
Yes, that I
affairs-
agree, and I asked you to do that earlier, and you seem to be avoiding it.
No, I tried actually to exemplify why that is a problem for non-intelligent mechanisms.
That's just it. You're trying to exemplify why it's a problem, and it's not.
It is.
No, you're
Absolutely.
using an example that doesn't fit.
It does fit.
No, it doesn't.
It
Because
does.
you're
If you
talking
let
about
me explain,
okay.
and I'll explain it to you.
Okay, where is the blueprint? Where's the blueprint for a bacterium?
It is stored in the genome and
No,
in
it's not. That is not a blueprint. That is not even
course it is.
metaphorically a blueprint.
Of course it is.
I mean, unless
So
you
what is-
really want to stretch your metaphors. No,
Well,
there
what-
are no instructions. There are no instructions in the DNA to do anything. What there is in the DNA is a sequence, and that sequence has there's a sequence of nucleotides, and there's other stuff that attach itself to the DNA. It's chemicals. It's a
Yes,
physical
but what
thing.
does it do?
It's
Yes,
not
but
a
what does it
blueprint.
do? Okay, so what is the
It's not
function
pure
of the-
information, and it's not
So-
information drawn up on a sheet of paper. It's not information programmed into anything. We're just talking about the physical arrangement of atoms.
Okay, so what is the function of DNA, Donald?
It's a molecule.
Yes, but what is the function of DNA?
Well, that depends on where it is. If it's sitting in outer space, it's not functioning at all. It's just sitting there.
Okay, so
And
you
that's the
don't
problem.
know.
That's the
What
problem. Is you
specifies-
keep wanting to divorce reality from reality and say, let's take some amino acids and just leave them laying around and watch and see if they do anything by themselves, just laying around. Well, if they're just laying around, by definition, you just made them not do anything. You just prevented them from doing anything. How
Okay,
about putting them in an environment where they actually do stuff and letting them do stuff?
Okay, is the sentence which I will make now correct or false? The sequence of nucleotides stored in DNA directs the making of the sequence of amino acids, which then will fold into in a functional polypeptide chain, which then will fold into 3D form and convey functional molecular machines, which are proteins.
No, not true.
Of course,
Not a
it's
true statement. No, it's not.
Of course,
That
it
is that is a prediction with a prediction and a prediction and another prediction. Yes, you've just made multiple predictions.
So what
No,
specifies?
it is not true. Okay,
so
so the
what
beginning of your sentence. What was the first
Okay.
thing you mentioned? Stop there. Go ahead. Give me the beginning of that.
So what specifies the sequence of the amino acid chains in living cells?
So you're not going to go back to the beginning of what you just did, like I asked you to. The beginning, where you started. You got a DNA sequence, right?
The information stored in DNA
Okay.
directs the making.
And a little
of
while ago,
proteins.
I mentioned that you could have your DNA sitting in outer space, kind of like you did with those, peptides earlier. Okay, so you got DNA, a DNA molecule with a sequence floating in space. Now, how is it going to fulfill the predictions you just gave for it? How is it going to do the stuff you did? Well, it's floating in space.
I didn't make predictions, Donald. I just
Yes, you
described
did.
what
You
we
said
see
it
in
will do
cells.
this. You said this will happen, and then that will happen, and that will happen, and that will happen. Now, we've got DNA floating in space. Do a little mental exercise and tell me, how is that DNA floating in space going to do the stuff you predicted?
So you're saying me that the information stored in DNA does not direct how to make proteins?
That's not what I said. No, I just asked you a question.
Well, is that correct or false?
It does so indirectly under certain circumstances. If you change the circumstances, then it won't likely do the same thing. It will do something else, or maybe do nothing at all, depending if it's just sitting there. I mean, you put it in the vacuum of space, yeah, it'll do something. It'll float around.
Donald, what is
It'll
the
still be
central
affected by gravity.
Donald, what is the central dogma in biology?
Why do we need a dogma in biology? Biology is the study of life.
So you don't know.
Biology is the study of life.
You can Google it, and then you will have right away an answer to
Why
my
do we
question.
need a central dogma in biology? Biology is the study of life. Are we talking about life here? Because I thought we were.
Okay, so let me explain what happens. You have a specific nucleotide sequence, which is conveyed through the genetic code, which are codons stored in DNA. That sequence is transcribed into messenger RNA through the RNA polymerase, and then that messenger RNA molecule goes to the ribosome, where the information conveyed to codons in the messenger RNA is translated. No, I'm not finished. Will translate into amino acids.
You just made a prediction again.
And no, that's what happens in the cell. That is what we see in the cell.
Okay, that's why I wanted to interrupt.
Prediction.
That's why I asked if I could interrupt, because for a while there you were talking about stuff that does happen. Okay, then you went to what will happen. When you talk about what will happen, then you're making a prediction.
Okay, maybe I confused you. I'm sorry for that. Okay.
No,
what I am saying,
didn't confuse me. I'm just clarifying that there's a distinction there. If you want to talk about what does happen, then we have to understand that that does happen under certain circumstances. If you want to talk about what will happen, the circumstances have to be right for it to be able to happen, or it won't. So if you just want to say we have DNA and
I want to talk about
all this
what
stuff
we
is
see.
going to happen.
I want to talk about what we see in the cell. Okay, and what we see in the cell is that the information stored in DNA through the genetic code.
Okay, first off, let's correct your terminology. Let's correct your phraseology.
No, you are not letting me finish.
Let me correct something that you've been repeatedly saying wrong. Okay, the information. It's not information stored in a DNA. It is a DNA sequence. Yes, you can metaphorically call it information stored in the DNA. Where did that information come from? Well, it was copied from an RNA molecule. Where did the RNA molecule get it from? Well, it was copied from a DNA molecule. Where did the DNA molecule get it from? Well, it was copied from an RNA molecule. Where did the RNA molecule get it from? It was copied. You can go back as far as you want that way. This is how the process works. But it's not storing information as in like there was some information that wasn't in DNA that somebody copied into DNA. It's a DNA sequence.
Well, the sequence is the information.
No, the information is the information. The sequence is the sequence. Those are two separate things. I understand how it's easy to confuse them, but there is a difference between them.
Donald.
And if you want to talk about the sequence of the DNA strand, we can talk about the sequence of the DNA strand. If you want to talk about information as if it came from somewhere else, then you have to talk about where it came from. And again, we can do that if you want, but then you have to address the stuff that you never address, the stuff I've tried to get you to address and you won't. And that is exactly where it did come from, the process that gets you there. And that is the DNA got it from RNA, that got it from DNA, that got it from RNA, that got it from DNA, that got it from RNA, that got it from DNA, that got it from RNA. And as that happens, each time when it goes through this process of replicating, it does so imprecisely. This is not a machine that does a very precise job of copying. It does a somewhat precise job of copying. Errors are made. Occasionally you end up with polyploidy, where you get extra copies of a chromosome. Sometimes you get an extra piece of a DNA molecule that you get two copies of the same DNA molecule that gets stitched together, and the DNA molecule just got a little bit longer. These things happen. So the information comes from somewhere. And the somewhere that it comes from is the molecular evolution of that DNA molecule.
All right. Donald, I think we have already talked about what about 1.5 hours or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I think it's okay that we continue this maybe another time. Okay.
If you like, I hope you'll think about what I just said, because I just answered literally all of your questions right there.
Well,
Every question I've ever heard you ask, they're all wrapped up in that.
If you ask me what the impression that I have in regards to what you just said, I think you if you want, I can give you the links, and then you will eventually understand a little bit better what we are talking about. I think
Why do you
don't.
I'm not understanding what you're talking about. I just told you where it comes from. You keep asking, and you think the Bible gives you the answer. I just gave you the answer. If you want to look into it, you can do that, and you can find the details of how that process works.
You gave no answer, basically.
Yes, I did give an answer. Apparently
so
you weren't paying attention. I'll give it to you again. The DNA gets it from the RNA, that gets it from the DNA, that gets it from the RNA, that gets it from the DNA, that gets it from the RNA, that gets it from the DNA, that gets it from the RNA. And at each step along the way, it changes a little bit.
Okay.
At each step along the way, it doesn't necessarily have to change. Maybe once in a while you get a perfect copy, but generally speaking, in a long strand of DNA, you're going to get some changes. That's usually how it works. There's an average human being probably has at least 100 mutations when they're born.
Donald, we will finish this conversation with just one question, which I would like that to answer. Can blueprints come from blueprints always from intelligence? Yes or no?
I guess that depends on what you're calling a blueprint, but I would say, generally speaking, what I know of as a blueprint, yeah, these are things that humans make. I mean, you can have computers print them out. A computer can make a blueprint and print it out. So yeah, it could come from something non-intelligent, but I don't know of them necessarily doing that.
Okay. Now, what I mean with blueprint is an instructional manual to make a house, for example, or a machine or a factory.
Okay, well, if you're talking about an instructional manual, that's okay. That's not really a blueprint. That's a separate thing. A blueprint is one thing. An instructional manual is another thing.
Okay.
And a DNA sequence is neither of those things and doesn't behave like either of those things. A DNA sequence is an arrangement of atoms in a molecule, and that arrangement of atoms in a molecule behaves according to physics. And it doesn't have to look up how to do that. It doesn't have to open up a manual on physics and say, oh, physics says that electrons are attracted to protons. There's nothing that it has to go through to figure out how to do that. No intelligence is required. All it has to do is be able to do physics. And I don't mean do physics as in like a physicist doing physics calculations. I mean do the physical calculations that physical things do, that atoms do, that molecules do, that protons do, that neutrons do, that quarks do, that leptons do. All of these things do physical processes, and they do the physical processes that, in a way that doesn't require a blueprint.
Okay. Donald, see us at Speed's channel or somewhere else, and we can keep our conversation. But I would like.
All right. Will you, if you don't mind saying, I mean, you can choose not to say, but I'd like to ask: will you invite your God to come speak for itself here?
Well, I think he did. You can read the Bible.
I'm not asking if a Bible can come speak for itself here. I don't think the Bible is going to be able to figure out how to get online.
No, he will not. No, he will not show up at this channel, Donald.
So you're speaking on behalf of your God and saying that he's already turned down the request.
Well, I've never seen it doing it at any channel, so I can predict that it won't happen.
Oh, I wasn't asking for a prediction. I was asking if you would be nice enough to invite your God.
Oh, I can do that. I can. Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
I appreciate that. That's all I'm asking for. Yeah, I don't expect you to guarantee that he will show up or that he won't show up, and making a prediction about it. I can make predictions too, but I'd rather not because I'd be guessing.
All right.
I don't like to assume things. So please do invite your God. I'd appreciate it. And if he shows up, maybe you can even identify him and come in the chat and say, yeah, that's my God there. Or if somebody comes in claiming to be your God and you don't think he is, maybe you can come in and tell him you don't believe he is your God, and maybe he can convince you.
All right. See you next time.
All right. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Otangelo.
Yeah, bye.
Well, anybody else want to come in here? Or should I just go ahead and close this thing up? I see the chat has been going on, and hi, Black Atheist. Hi, Agnostic Pagan Mom. Hi, Robert X. Hi, the Rivelin. Is that? Am I pronouncing that right? The Rivelin, the Rivelin. Not sure. Let's see. Anybody I missed here? Stephanie Tretton. Hello. And how do you pronounce this? Usialka. I'd really like to, thank everybody for being here and watching the show and participating in the chat. And I hope the chat will show up. Oh, I did pronounce it right. Riverlin, got it. Rivelin. Okay, the R is silent. Rivelin, got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's that was interesting, and yeah, I really didn't like doing the whole moderator part of having to momentarily silence someone to be able to get the conversation back on track. But I guess that's something I might have to learn to do. Who knows? Maybe I'll have to moderate a god in here someday. Might get an actual god in here and have to tell him, sorry, but I gotta mute you for a moment, God. But oh, thanks. Answers in Atheist. Answers in Atheism. Yeah. Yeah. I know you don't really like doing that moderating thing either, but it's got to be done sometimes. And I know it's been done to me. Yeah. Yeah. So far, the only god we've had in here. Well, we've had one that was a god, a character someone was going to play, and they never got to play their character. And then we've got another one who's, well, correct me if I'm wrong. Answers in Atheism, but just a person defining themselves in God as God in accordance with a particular God definition that some Buddhists use, and not meaning to say that that they're any kind of supernatural being or anything like that. And I think that's important, that we should acknowledge the fact that when people say there can only be one God, what do they mean by that? If they're narrowing down the definition of God to the point where there can only be one such thing, well, the universe fits that description. There's only one universe until you get into multiverse theory. Okay, well then the multiverse is, maybe there's only one of those. But what if there's not? So where can you actually get to the point where you can say there's only one God? And if you define a God in any reasonable way, it doesn't make sense that there can be only one. If you define a God as something that there's only one of, well, then in order to prove there's a God, you'd have to prove that there was not only a thing fitting other parts of the description of a God, but also that there was only one of that thing, because otherwise, by definition, it's not a God. So yeah, only one cosmos. That would be it. And even the cosmos, there's only one cosmos, but is there only one chaos? Is the chaos underlying the cosmos, or is the chaos countable? Can you say there's only one chaos, or that there's an infinite number of chaoses? We don't really know. It's like, how many nothings are there? Can you double the number of nothings in a given space? Some of these things they're deepities, so to speak. They're profound questions that going to back this up and watch the Benny Hinn show. All right. Well, thanks, Answers in Atheism. I appreciate that. Thanks again for being here. Yeah, I should read through some of this chat stuff. I'm not sure if I go through it backward or forward, or anybody in the chat got any suggestions for how I should go about that, or should I just go ahead and end the show and pick this up again at 10:25 p.m. Pacific time. Let's see. Nature is the way reality behaves. Yeah, that seems to be the case. You're welcome, Revelin. Revelin. Yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up. And I hate to end the live chat, and then people can't get back in. I'll tell you what. Look for the live chat soon on my channel for the upcoming episode, and if I knew how, I'd try to set that up while this is still going, and then I could just give you the link to it. But I don't know how to do that. So there's that. Here, let's see. Nah, I'm not going to try to do that. But yeah, I'll try to set up the live chat as soon as I can. And if anybody wants to come in the live chat and talk on on that one before that show starts, feel free. I will be coming and going. I'll be around from time to time, and if I see people talking in the live chat, if I've got the opportunity and I'm not busy washing dishes or cooking or something that can't get my hands there, I'll try to respond, and probably at least say hello, if not hold a bit of a conversation. This program is going to exhaust me. I'm pretty sure of it. I may have to go back to the original planned schedule, or at least some slower schedule than twice a day. But yeah, for now, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream, long as it's been, and plan on starting another stream up at 10:25 p.m. Pacific time, and that's U.S. Pacific time, and pick it up from there. And maybe, just maybe, Otangelo's God will show up for that episode. Now that he's hopefully got the invitation. Of course, I don't know, where is that God and how long will it take the invitation to get there? Has it already arrived? Not sure how that stuff works, because there's physics, and well, then there's the unknown, right? Does the label God imply some sort of supernatural being? Well, that's CDN Oliman asking that. Well, yes, it does to some people sometimes. The second part of the question, at all times. Yeah, no, it doesn't at all times. It does for some people, it does at all times, but it doesn't at all times in the sense that different people use it at different times. So yeah, the label God is just a name. I mean, technically, God with a capital G, that's rules of English. That's a name. That's a proper noun. And you can label your pet rock God. You could name your teddy bear God. CDN stands for Canadian. Okay, thank you for that. Canadian Ollie Man. Or Ali Man. I'm not sure which way you pronounce that. I'm guessing it's Ali Man, but yeah, could be. Yeah, because of the double L. Gotta be Ali Man. Yeah. English phonetics. Such a mess. And then there's, of course, the different dialects of English and their various phonetics. Don't say that the FSN requires faith. Yeah. Any rate, I need a break. I haven't eaten yet today, so I'm gonna get off of here and make myself something to eat. And well, I'll try to set up the stream first for the episode 4. And yeah, one of these days I'm gonna make a mistake in that. I'm certain of it, and I'm gonna mention the wrong episode number. But so far I haven't gotten enough of them that that I start losing track. So yeah, ending episode 3 and gonna set up episode 4. And once I got that set up, get something to eat, and I'll be back in here later for another episode of All Gods Invited. So thanks everyone for being here. Take care, Top Dog.